and welcome to episode 117 of Zapped to the Past. I am Adrian Mills, and I'm joined as always by Mr. Graham Raddings. If you haven't listened before, this is a podcast where we discuss games that were released for the Commodore 64. Last week, we looked at our first batch of games from issue 47 of Zap 64, which we are in no way affiliated with, and were juddered by Jordan and Bird, walked the tightrope and fell off repeatedly with circus games, and found what we were looking for in Zamzara. This week, we continue our look at March 1989 and the second batch of games reviewed in issue 47 of Zap 64, along with what was also going on in the UK albums chart that month. Graham, tell us of the games that we will speak of this week.
In this fun-packed episode where we do indeed question if Trebor mints were in fact a minty bit stronger, we set out on another landmark point-and-click adventure, this time on a desperate race against the clock before everyone in the world gets turned completely stupid in Zak McKracken and the Alien Mindbenders. We head into Sinclair Spectrauma conversion land with a bill-postering monochromatic man-strawberry in the horribly punned Pasteman Pat, blend Rambo, Ghostbusters, Jet Set Willy, and potentially Dex's Midnight Runners in another Sinclair Spec-troubled nightmare in Ghost Hunter, before finally getting our snazzy nuclear arms race style in check and flying off into space to shoot out a load of missiles in the C-64 conversion of SDI, Strategic Defense Initiative. While we debate the results of the Minty tests, which weirdly concluded that where a mint is shoved does potentially impact its strength, we also become a bad dude, or a ninja, but not both, or possibly either, in the side-kicking and plurally dubious conversion of the arcade Dragon Ninja. We also slapshot, wrist flick, skid, slide, and punch over the ice with a giant wooden tick shape. In Powerplay Hockey, USA versus USSR, we discover the relatively uncharted exploring possibility of a bearded pancake with legs in the squat resolution challenged superhero, and then question the aviation type of flying objects before slipping into a branded caped leotard and getting all protectory in Superman the Man of Steel, before finally getting some miniature hand arrows and strategically throwing them at a numerical circle for fun in the enticing and whirly Jocky Wilson's Darts Challenge. In the end, the simple extra strong mint remains the pick of the packs, no surprise there. Unlike some of the games in this week's selection, some of those were clearly found under the sofa cushion and covered in sofa crud and dust, not for public consumption.
That's quite a good impromptu impression of Dumbledore. You did a bit of a Dumbledore then.
What, tell us of the games that we'll speak of this week?
Yeah, you went half Dumbledore.
What, that dumb?
Bulldor. You went Bulldor.
I just went either full Bulldor or dumb. You pick. You're a Dumble. Great.
Yeah, thanks for that.
My life is complete.
my esteem needed that today, thanks. Cool, with a boost like that.
Of all the backhanded compliments I've ever had, that's the one that slapped me in the face hardest.
Yeah, that's the one that left a ring dint in my forehead, yeah.
I've been full dumbled.
Okay, cozy selection, isn't it, this week? That sounded cozy, what I just said. I haven't said it yet, but it sounded good.
Yeah, I'm sure there will be at least one good one in there.
Packed full of beans!
Packed full of something. It really is. Oh, dear. I'm just going to get it out of the way at the front because people may not listen to the end. Who knows? But if you wish to support the podcast, yeah, but you don't know, do you? They get to the end of the game.
Bit.
It's like, you don't know what we stick at the end. If you wish to support the podcast, you can do so. You can do that financially. You can head to our Patreon, patreon.com/Zap to the Past. You can chuck us £1 a month. Aces, or you can go for the full fat experience, which is £4.50 over here. With inflation as it is around the world, God knows what that's worth. I have no idea these days. I used to say it was price of a pint of beer, but it's not anymore. It might get you a thimble full.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's £4.50, and that gets you access to the Discord, access to the episodes early, ask us questions, we ask the podcast stuff, join in with the end of year reviews, and anything else that we can do. I think you get money off for the merch as well, don't you?
Yes, the Patreons do get a discount on our wonderful merchandise available on both Redbubble and on zaptothepast.shop.
That's cool. There you go. So either of those places. So yeah, pay up front, you get money off. As long as you pay more money. It's a great...
Exactly. We like the way it works, and that's the way it works. That's the way it is.
It's a brilliant scheme. But yeah, you can do that. Or you can go to Ko-fi, which is ko-fi.com/Zap to the Past, and buy us a coffee if you wish to.
Yeah, lovely.
If you don't wish to do that, you could leave us a review on X. Bloody X.
X. It's Twitter.
Twix.
You can't just name something X.
Should we just call it Twix? There's 2 bars.
Yeah, that's probably what people are going to be saying instead of tweeting, isn't it?
Yeah.
How do you even? What is the vernacular for doing a tweet? Was Twitter? Wasn't it?
I read somewhere that it's a zeet.
A what? That's some kind of shaving cream that I don't want to be involved in.
Either that, or it's a cream to remove hair.
Well, either way, it ain't good. I don't like it.
No one does. No. So there you go. That's all that out of the way. Should we get into some games?
Yes. Let's roll this wagon and see where we go.
All right. Let's get into our first game this week, and we have 9 again this week. 9.
9.
9. 9. 9. 9.
Blimey. 9.
No, 9.
I wonder it took so long.
That has them. No, 9. That has them rolling the German Isles. Let's get into our first game. And Graham, it's over to you to tell us what it's like to be Zak McKracken in the world of the Alien Mindbenders.
Wow, it's a long time ago this game was made, 35 years ago.
All these were.
Publisher was, of course, Lucasfilm Games. Why don't they just call it Lucas Games? I don't know. We'll never know the answer to that question because it doesn't exist anymore. The coder / designer / person that pieced together the Scum engine bits for this, I think they called them Scummies or Scumites, I can't remember, or Scumlets, that's what they called them, Scumlet. The Scumlet on this was David Fox. Now, David Fox was a long-standing Lucasfilm person. He was the guy that made Rescue and Fractalus. In fact, he was the guy that coded the engine for Rescue and Fractalus, so one of the guys. Pretty clever guy. He also was partially responsible, I think, for some of the stuff for Maniac Mansion, of course. Labyrinth was another big one of his, and then the Indiana Jones games, and, well, things like that. This is also part coded by Matthew Kane. The graphics here are Martin Cameron and Gary Wynick. He did the Eidolon and Maniac Mansion. And the musician here is Matthew Kane. So, yeah, also, sound effects, such as they are, Matthew Kane and Chris Grigg. And so the second Scum Engine game is upon us. And, of course, this is the next game in that sort of series, as it were, not sequel, but in the series of those games from Lucasfilm after the highly successful Maniac Mansion. This one was written and directed, like I said, by Lucasfilm Games stalwart David Fox, with insight from an American spiritual philosopher and self-described practical mystic, a guy called David Spangler, who at this point authored about 13 books on mysticism and spiritualism and all that kind of stuff. From the outset, this was actually meant to be a serious game, sort of that dealt with some of those ideas of, sort of practical mystic stuff and all of that. But in a sort of adventure quest tone, so more along the lines of Indiana Jones type vibe, really.
Really?
But with the timely intervention from Ron Gilbert, a certain Ron Gilbert who we all, of course, come to know and love, he decided and advised David Fox that this game would be better suited with a strand of humour in it. And so the humour in this game was kind of added in, as were some of the other elements. So although this isn't a direct Ron Gilbert game, his influence is very clear upon it because of that. And they're all a small team working together. By the way, I didn't realise how much they were at the arch nemesis of Sierra Online at the time. They were like warring factions between the two. Very big rival, well, not big. One was a very tiny part of an organisation. One was quite a big company making lots of these kind of games. And they were very much in their shadow. No, that's allowed. There's a really good video interview with David Fox where he talks about that, which we'll put in all the show notes. Anyway, back to this game. So the story then. The game is set in 1997, believe it or not, where an alien race known as the Caponians have taken over the telephone company, or just global communications in general, and are using a mind-bending machine that emits a special hum to gradually make everyone on Earth stupid. Classic. Luckily, another Earth-friendly Guardian race of super-intelligent aliens known as the Scholarians had foreseen this dastardly Caponian plan and left plans for a defense system called the Scholarian device, along with the components, to activate it dotted around the Earth and with some on Mars. The device parts need to be assembled and the whole thing put together and activated while there is still time. And clues on how this can be done are sent via dreams to a small collection of people on Earth. You play as Zak McKracken, an erstwhile yet frustrated reporter for the National Enquirer, at this time frustrated from getting daft stories about two-headed squirrels and stuff like that, which is in the opening scene, who has one of these dreams and visions and must piece together a plan, find the people from his dream and the places from there, and set about getting together the Scholarian device components, assembling it, and then activating it to save the whole world from getting stupid. Zak isn't alone. The visions and dreams were also given to 3 others, Annie Larris, a freelance scientist, and Melissa China and Leslie Bennett, 2 Yale University students. Between them, and through working together, they must explore jungles, mazes, ancient and alien monuments, and more to put a stop to the Caponians. This is played out as a point-and-click adventure. That's the kind of crux of it. So this game obviously uses the Scum engine. I can't remember what that stands for now, but it's the Scum engine. And so the layout of the screen and the way it plays is essentially the same as Maniac Mansion. The upper 2/3 of the game window are the graphic point and click area, where the game characters and backgrounds render for you to navigate and explore. The lower third is the verb control system, here presented as a series of words similar to Maniac Mansion, that allows you to walk, pick up, use the items, give, etc., that kind of thing. You control things as you did in all Scum games. So you have a crosshairs and you move this around the game window with the joystick pressing fire to highlight items of interest, interact, walk around, that kind of thing. And you use the verb controls to specify certain actions. So far, so good. It's a pretty easy overlay system, reasonably intuitive, but any crosshair joystick control has some limitations in a game like this, I always feel. I'll come back to how that manifests in a little while. The graphics here are essentially the same kind of style as Maniac Mansion, so medium res, with relatively okay drawn, if somewhat simplistic backgrounds and characters. They're not going to win any design or animation awards with this, really, but they work in service of this kind of game. Okay. The main characters are a bit samey, if you ask me, which is a shame, because they were more varied in Maniac Mansion, because you could choose from more characters, but that actually becomes with a bigger problem, which I'll talk about later. And the backgrounds do vary in quality here, which does have a wider bearing on how this game plays through, and I'll come back to why as well. The crux of the game is, of course, a point-and-click adventure, and so much of the interaction is based around this mechanic and using it to solve puzzles, pick up objects, identify clues, and things like that. A lot of information and clues are present in the environment, location, objects, and in some of the things you got with the game, including sort of the code sheet and the newspaper that came with it and everything. And so you need to, as you did with Maniac Mansion, carefully walk around your environments, taking notes if you can, or on occasion, and just piece together things as you go to derive the game logic. It's very much a this leads to this, that leads to this leads to that kind of notion with these games. That's kind of how they work and kind of operate. Okay. Part of this game sees you flying around the world to a bunch of locations, meeting all sorts of odd characters, and even heading to the surface of Mars. As the game progresses, you will be able to switch to 3 other characters and control each of them, which is very of Maniac Mansion, and it's just sort of a mechanic they come back to and then actually walk away from completely, which is interesting about the whole Scum Engine type games. And it's worth noting, in order to complete this game, you must finish with all the characters alive. Death can happen in this game, as well as some other traps. Again, I'll come to these as some of them. Well, your tolerance of such things can depend on your feelings of point-and-click games generally. So we'll come back to some of those things. The game is very beloved by the general C64 fraternity, the spiritual successor to Maniac Mansion, and of course the second C64 Scum game. Big deal. Indeed, though this game would eventually appear on loads of formats and have relatively modern remakes, fan-made sequels and more, the original version was for the C64, which for me gives this a special place in the point-and-click games history because of the way it was made and for the computer that it was made for. This was a C64 game, never mind all the other versions that came later. As a game, there are good things going on here, and of course, there's some problems. Indeed, problems that at this stage seem inherent for the Scum engine and design choices, and things that later seem to be remedied for titles such as Indiana Jones and perhaps even later down the line, Monkey Island. So some of the problems we encounter with this particular type of game, these early ones, they don't tend to come up in the late ones because they figure out how to stop it from happening. But again, I'll cover all this in a bit. So the good things first off then. This is a fun adventure with a nice slice of humour, all said and done. The puzzles can be challenging, but they are not insurmountable and don't have to be completed in a totally linear way. There is some wiggle room here if you make a mistake or miss an object. The character of Zak is a clear precursor to Guybrush Threepwood from the Monkey Island games, and there is a clearer line between this and the later Scum games than perhaps there was from many of the others. There is a fun mix of locations and things to encounter, and some of these being a clear and direct influence on later games, the dancing natives giving you a secret code, for example, which is immediately ripped off and put into Monkey Island, or Monkey Island 2, I can't remember which one it's in. The controls have a good level of intuition, and so you don't find yourself over-clicking on the whole, and there is some forgiveness around objects in terms of their clickbox, which is a nice affordance to the player. So you don't have to be precisely quite on things. You can just be around the edges of it. And certainly with the words, the way the verb sort of word system works, it does remember some words that you place in. So you don't have to click and click on something else. It will actually, if you go off something, it will remember the last 2 things you put in there. And saves you a little bit of going to and from it, to and fro with the control, which is quite nice. Unlike Maniac Mansion, though, there are less cutscenes, which means you are in character for longer, and with regular saves, you can at least happily progress through this. The original did come with a code sheet / protection system, which means that on occasion, you will need to identify a specific pattern in a section and enter this to be able to continue in the game. If you can't do that, you can't continue in the game. Although, obviously, the version we had was protection removed, shall we say. This manifests... This obviously manifests when you're buying flight tickets, which are an integral part of the game. You also have money in this game, which you need to purchase flight tickets with. And there are additional puzzles to think of around that. The pace of the game is good, and there is less pick up and put down logic here too. All of those are good things, but it's not all moonlight and roses. There are some issues here, of course, as well. It does play a little slower than Maniac Mansion, at least it seemed that way to me. There's quite a bit of walking left and right here, and it can feel somewhat laborious to do so in this game, because there is a lot of going backwards and forwards to some of the locations. You can also, unfortunately, back yourself into a corner, or a logic corner in this game, which is a little bit of an unforgivable thing with some of these games. Spending too much money, for example, means you have insufficient funds to buy a flight ticket and you can't continue. Or not having specific objects at certain points can leave you totally stranded. You can also die in this game. For example, Zak can drown or suffocate or even get eaten at certain points. When this happens, not only does this make the game incompletable, but also seems it can sort of carries on for no reason. So you would need to revert to a previous save at that point because you cannot finish the game if one of your characters has died, which sort of makes sense but doesn't make sense. While some of the puzzles are good, some of the locations feel either pointless or pointlessly frustrating. The jungle sections in some of the locations, which are a series of just doors really, offer no puzzle and are just an annoying series of steps clearly designed to hide the relatively small set of locations in the game. And in fact, in an interview with David Fox, the inclusion of the maze sequences in the game is something he deeply regrets to this day because he literally hates them. And he said that when he was playing the game himself and playtesting it, they annoyed him when he got to them himself and he thought, should I keep these in? But he did, unfortunately for us. So, bit of a design cock-up, really. So, like I said, the jungle sections are just doors. They offer no puzzle, no annoying series of steps, and the idea of them hiding small set of locations in the game. The locations are reasonably varied here, but there are definitely fewer of them. Some parts of the later mazes are played in the dark as well, which is really stupid. And perhaps one of my first big complaints about this, that there's at least 3 mazes I can think of where you're in the dark. You don't have a lighter, you don't have a torch, you just got to wander around in the dark. Really daft to do that. No, it's really daft. Alongside that, some of the mazes are way too long and rely on you going through the right series of doors in the right order, which if you don't know what you're doing, essentially is pot luck. Now, in an interview, again, David Fox describes the logic of this and the best way I can describe it. If you go through 2 consecutive doors in the jungle sequence, for example, you'll get to where you need to go. If you double back on yourself, it resets every time. So people who were confused, if they go backwards, if you went through a door and then you go another door to the right and then another door to the right, you're more towards where you want to be. If you went through that door and then went back on yourself in some way, then it's going to reset. And it meant that people were stuck in some of these sections inadvertently for quite some time, not just until by luck, they happened to just not break the rules and go forward. It's different later in some of the mazes where you've got to go through the right sequence of doors, which is also really stupid. But again, they are a big frustration and a big complaint point for me. Alongside that, some of the mazes are too long and see you having to go through the right series of doors, which is potluck. Those sections quickly become the most frustrating and pointlessly challenging in the whole game. And there's at least 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 5, 6 maybe of those in that game. There's a lot of mazes in one game.
That's too many mazes. Too many.
Yeah. Often as well, they'll just lead to a single room with a couple of things to do. And that's the end of that. So it's not even a good payoff when you get to some of the end of those mazes. It's quite frustrating in the way that works. So the companion aliens seem like a tertiary thought in much of this game too. There's very little in terms of interaction or cutscenes with them. And so their plan feels less like impending doom or menace, nor do you get a full sense of what they're actually about or what they're doing. Something that didn't happen in Maniac Mansion. You was very clear of the parameters of that with Maniac Mansion. It's less clear in this game what the aliens are actually doing. Apart from making everyone stupid, they just don't really do much of else. In fact, there's a certain point when you go up in a spaceship and you meet the alien leader who dresses like Elvis for some reason and just lets you go. It's like, it's sort of really odd. It's really weird. So you don't really know what they're doing, why they're doing it. It's never really explained. I guess maybe it doesn't need an explanation because it's just part of the whole, the whole National Enquirer type mentality and spiritual idea that there's just loads of stuff going on in the universe, man, and all that kind of thing. But without kind of an impending menace or doom, it's unusual for a game like this. And the later games of the Scum engine do return to the more of those cutscenes to drive the narrative. Monkey Island is kind of the one I go to because it's my favorite of all the Scum games. And you can see how they sort of thought, actually, we better put some more of this narrative stuff in because without going back to LeChuck's cave, you don't feel the menace of anybody. It's just like, it don't kind of work. So the cost here is big for this because without the interaction and idea of what they're up to, you generally don't have the same drive to get to the end of the game. You don't really, it doesn't feel like there's an imperative. What's the big imperative in Zak McKracken Alien Mindbenders? Well, you've got to stop them unleashing the stupid machine. Yeah. Because it doesn't manifest anywhere in the game. That's a problem. Some of the clues are obvious in the game, and for the most part, you're not going to have too much, noggin scratching, try and reach before you start to reach for a guide or a walkthrough. But there are some locations and items in their locations that seem added to flesh things out for something to do that have no real bearing on things. So items at the bottom of the sea hidden in seaweed, for example, or a small key at the end of a long series of mazes. This also manifests when you notice that certain locations can only be flown to by other locations, meaning you need to buy a flight ticket, fly to the first location, then immediately buy another ticket for the second location. That's just stupid. Later you actually get the yellow crystal, which means you can teleport around. But even that can trap you in a logic loop if you're not careful. Got to be really careful with that. Also, at least a couple of the puzzles are time-based, which means you need to do a series of actions quickly before you are seen or captured, or before a certain timed event takes place. On the plane, for example, you must distract the flight attendant long enough to open all the overhead lockers and get the oxygen tank, the cushion, and the lighter, objects you cannot progress without. This must be completed in a certain time frame, or you are seen by the flight attendant or the flight lands at a certain point. So that's it. You get one shot at that when you've got to go through it again. Your money is a finite resource, remember. You're not going to get multiple goes at that. At a certain point, you need to switch between characters and grab items or throw switches. And on Mars, you need to top up oxygen or you will suffocate. This one, since there is no indication other than a message popping up very briefly before you die, is a right pain in the arse.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've played through Zak McKracken Alien Mindbenders more times than I ever care to think about. And I can tell you, it still pisses me off because it just happens. All of a sudden, it's like, oh my God, I'm choking, I'm dead. And it's as quick as that. You don't get any time to really do anything. And there's only one point you can get oxygen. And if you've traveled by a tram to get all the way back to where the pyramid is on Mars, you can't get back to your van in time to top up an oxygen before you're dead. You can't do it.
That's bad.
Yeah, it's a real frustrating point. You've got to really make sure that you top up with the oxygen and stuff. And it's doable, but if you didn't know you had to do it, you're going to get there and die. And if you haven't saved, well, I hate to think what'll happen. Screams and tears, and there ain't no songs of joy and tears. There'll be plenty of tears of sadness, I tell you. So it's a scum game, and it has scum problems, all of which are later ironed out, but there are silly traps and annoyances. There's just, they are there. If you're willing to tolerate those, and you will know some of them from playing Maniac Mansion. If you'll know by playing those games like Maniac Mansion and this, if you fit that bill, if you're tolerant of this, then there's a good game here with some fun ideas and a decent adventure. The controls feel quite responsive with some nice affordance and logic to how they interact. It's a clear stepping stone too, and perhaps this should be seen as one more step on the point and click ladder, where some ideas work and some don't, but gradually things are going in the right direction. There are some good puzzles, locations, and characters, and there is at least a sense of progression, story, and an ending. Graphics are okay, fun scripts, and some laughs along the way, giving this a nice pre-Monkey Island vibe. It does have that. But if it isn't your bag, then you might well view this game as quite troubled. There are frustrating parts, the totally dark mazes are utterly stupid, the jungle section's unnecessary, the pace is slower, and the alien threat feels like an afterthought. Indeed, you can feel the notion of Indiana Jones in here, perhaps more than Maniac Mansion if you think about it, which is why it feels less narratively enabled than it should. And you can also fall into those horrible logic traps, which is never a good thing. I mean, some of them are obvious. Like at one point you get picked up by an airplane and it goes to the Bermuda Triangle and it disappears, and then you end up being back into the sky. And if you don't put in your parachute, you're going to die. When you hit the water, you're dead. Mm-hmm. But it's not necessarily that instinctive. Obviously your parachute is, but it's not an instinctive first thought to do certain things in this game. And just the human brain doesn't always work the way, in the immediacy of, oh God, I must put that parachute on. It's going to catch you out. Probably little things like that. Now, for me, I've got a bit of a soft spot for this, really, though more legacy than appreciation. Having battled my way through this so many times, including trying to navigate many broken copies on disc back in the day, which I can tell you was a curse. It was satisfying to finish this finally way back in the day, and it still has that sort of appeal to me. I think the storyline appealed to me more than Maniac Mansion, and because the root of this has a bit more of a direct line to Monkey Island, it perhaps set me up for enjoying those games much more later on than I did at this point, although I did still like it. On replay, while much of the charm for me obviously remains a little bit, I was reminded of the silly logic problems and the stupid dark mazes, and those are probably blockers with better scum games out there now than this one. But this one does have a sort of a line today, the Tentacle, Indiana Jones and Monkey Island, and while looking at some of the utter gaming rubbish getting published in 1989, this does represent a proper platform-specific game that was built and engineered for the C64 and on disc. That's not a bad thing, because there's been some utter rubbish that's been released. Mm-hmm. So as a footnote then, there was a DOS version of this released later in the same year, then an Amiga and Atari ST one, and then something for the mysterious FM Towns, whatever the hell that was. In 2015, a re-release was launched on GOG.com. There are at least 10 fan-made sequels, including such delights as The New Adventures of Zak McKracken, Zak McKracken Goes Looking for Hot Coffee, Zak McKracken Between Time and Space, Zak McKracken and the Alien Rockstars, and Zak McKracken and the Lonely Sea Monster, to name but a few. Some of these are downloadable, some of them are good, some of them are not so good, but the links I'll put in the show notes for you to find. This game didn't set the world on fire in terms of success. In the US, it just really didn't land and was not considered a commercial success. The game fared better in Europe, with David Fox later writing I think Zak was far more popular in Germany and Europe than in the States. I'm not sure why. Maybe my humour was more European in nature. Don't know about that. It's a good game if you go with it and you accept its failings, but avoid and skip to Monkey Island or Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis if you want something that's not going to stick you in some of those logic traps and perhaps plays a bit faster. I have a soft spot for it, but I know that it's flawed. There's no way around that. And I can sort of, on replay, I'm like, yeah, the flaws are, some of those are game design choices. And is that a little bit unforgivable at this time, really? Or are they just finding their feet? I don't know. How did you find it after all this time?
Well, I mean, it's technically very accomplished in the sense of the engine and everything and the way it works. And as you said, the point and click is nice. The affordance, it's easy enough to do stuff. I like the fact that you just click on an object and then you don't always have to, it'll remember the object. So you can just do use or work and pick up and do that. There's sort of a little remembrance there. So you don't always have to go back and click on the object.
Touch that.
And things like that. That's all fine. But I'm not going to add much more to what you've said. Maybe I think I've been pretty clear as we've gone through these games that they're just not for me. They're just a genre that has never clicked with myself. Maybe it's because
very good
point and clicked with myself. Yeah, I didn't mean that. Maybe, and I thought about it. Maybe it is because around this time, we spoke of things like the Eidolon and this first person stuff and things like that. I didn't have a disk drive, so
yes, I think that could be a bit.
It's probably just one of those games that I never. When you're in those early formative years and you're looking at games that you're going to sort of stick with, these kind of games just pass me by, and I just found them like a bit. Yeah, I can't play them at home. I don't have the time to play them, and I gave it a go. I did a bit of wandering around. I picked some stuff up. I got annoyed by the fact that I couldn't just move the bloody the dresser to get my key or whatever it was. And you have to use a bit of paper. I mean, that's not logical. I just reach further under or lift the dresser or shove it out the way.
Yeah.
It's things like that. My brain goes, as a furniture, it's got to move the furniture, grab it. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Zach's weak. But then a piece of paper is enough to pull it out. I was like, and that was illogical to me. I thought, this won't work. Oh, it worked. That's stupid. Anyway, picking stuff up, use the thing on the thing, watch the result. I got a TV clip, lifted up the seat cushion. Oh, there's the remote. Yeah, it's all right. Okay, I watched the clip. Some people had landed on Mars and I wandered about a bit. I just lost interest. I just do. I can't. These games, and I think this one in particular is a little bit slow. I mean, that's just a bit too slow for me. I mean, it's obviously a very good one. Don't get me wrong. If you're into these and you love them, you're going to love it. It's very influential as well, I think. I think you're right in that I can see more of Monkey Island in this than I could in Maniac Mansion. But then again, Monkey Island's never been a series that's really tricked me either. I think I actually preferred Neuromancer, though. I spent a bit more time playing that when we had that as another point and clicker.
It's a good game, that.
I think I found the setting in that more...
yeah, I can totally dig that. Yeah.
And obviously, they had the bonus of actually working from the book, and they had it all sort of laid out, so they had that to draw from. So maybe I don't know, but this needs acknowledgement. It's great in the fact of what it is, and like you rightly say, we've played some utter dog eggs and turds recently. This is clearly a very good game. It's just not for me. Point and clickers never.
Yeah, that's totally fair. And I think because it's nice to go back to this now and again and replay it. And I've been doing a lot of digging into David Fox a little bit, not literally, that's gross. I've just been sort of around his house, camping outside his house, going through his bins. He eats a lot of chicken. I tell you, no, I don't really. And just as I've gone through some of the sort of interviews and things like that, a few things sort of become quite apparent. That Lucasfilm Games, obviously a very small, dedicated team. Do you know they didn't shave their facial hair while they made Zak McKracken for the whole period? Because they figured out that it would save them about 16 to 18 hours of dev time. Because that's how much crunching they were doing. Yeah, because that's how much time it saved them in terms of how much coding they could do. Because they were on a very tight schedule, obviously, to get all this done and coded and put together and everything else. Crazy. And also, this was... I didn't realise until I'd watched one of the interviews how heavily piracy had impacted them with Rescue and Fractalus and with Ball Blazer. Particularly, both of those games got pre-released before they were actually published by the pirate scene, including a version of Ball Blazer that was called Ball Blaster. It was actually a preview version, or at least an unfinished version, but it was released and sneaked out before they actually got published properly. And that greatly affected them, which is why this comes with 7 pages of code sheet, comes with all of the extra stuff. There's loads of clues that, they made it as difficult to do without the code sheet. And also the code sheet was printed on dark red cardboard as well, that came with it. So you couldn't just take it to a photocopy machine and photocopy it because it didn't photocopy.
Oh, right. Okay.
So they'd taken steps that they could. And it was, of course, this game came on 2 discs on the C64. So quite a lot.
Quite a lot. Yeah.
One of those things. But it's the interviews that I've read, it's David Fox's game all the way through. But he's a very sort of mild kind of guy. He doesn't, he speaks about his time at Lucasfilm Games with sort of quiet tones. He's not as lively as Ron Gilbert or somebody like that. But I don't know how much of, because he wrote all of this stuff and all of that spiritual stuff that's in Zak McKracken. That's straight from David Fox. So all of the going to mystics and gurus, all of that kind of stuff, all of the non-religiously based stuff that's replete through Zak McKracken, is essentially about off-world aliens and all that, Egyptian gods and everything. That's interesting that he wrote all that into it, and maybe that was what put off, some of the parts of the American audience, because, who knows, but it certainly was not a big hit, which is kind of odd. So, and I think I never came across the original ever. I mean, I hate to say it, and sorry, Lucasfilm Games, with all the piracy and that, but I had about 9 different versions of this that came across my transom back in the day.
No, I mean, big games like this just weren't getting stocked at WH Smith's and Boots and places like that. They just weren't.
Absolutely mad.
So no chance of us ever seeing this out in the wild.
Yeah. But, if you're into your point-click games, it's one of the ones you'll have played it. You must have. You will have played this if you're into them.
Yeah.
And if you're not, then I would suggest, if you're wanting something a bit more cerebral and a bit more intense, go and play Neuromancer, because that's just as good, if not better, probably, than Zak McKracken in the sense of the depth of gameplay and the depth of interesting stuff in there. But if you want the sort of the next one in the Lucasfilm Games tradition, pre-Indiana Jones and all of that, then obviously Zak McKracken is a good recommendation for that.
Yeah, there you go. That's Zak McKracken, the Alien Mindbenders. Did get 93%, fully deserving of that, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think it should be around the 90s somewhere.
Yeah, there we go. All right, let's move into our next one, which as ever with our second game, I am sure will be equally as good. And that game is Pasteman Pat. That's Pasteman Pat. Okay, this is from Silverbird, and there is one person behind this. According to Lemon 64, it was created by Jeff Calder. On Moby Games, though, the creator is down as Linda Calder. I don't know if they've changed their name or gender, or if it's a different person, or I don't know. I have no idea. Anyway, Pasteman Pat sees Pat, the hero of the game, left in a spot of bother. After putting up all the posters around Groovetown yesterday, they've woken up to find their arch rival, Nasty Norville, has gone and rejigged them all, making them look all stupid and muddled. Never one stand back from a challenge and let someone else muck up his work, Pat heads back out with his trusty brush and ladder and attempts to put all the posters back as they should be, whilst fending off the attacks of Nasty Norval and his henchmen at the same time. So that's the story, such as it is. This is a sliding block puzzle game that is made harder by rubbish controls, slow scrolling, and an inability to see the whole picture at once, which is stupid. I'm just going to put it out there. It's just stupid. The game offers 12 difficulty levels and 5 different posters to get through. Now, if you care to go to the agenda, Graham, I've actually just put the cover for one of those games in there that's all kinds of wrong. Demon's Revenge on the Spectrum. There's so much wrong with that picture. I don't know what that wizard is doing and what that pointy thing is that he's sort of looking all kind of pleasured at. With the demon in the back.
What the hell is that?
We'll post this.
Those milk churns going off something at the bottom there. Exploding milk churns.
I don't know, but but that demon in the background looks like he's going, hey.
I don't want to know what that wizard's doing.
No, I don't either. No. He's obviously seen something in that book with his massive hand.
Shit.
It's so terrible. Anyway, there are 5 different posters to get through. They're all based on games. There's Ollie and Lissa, which we know of. Stunt Bike Simulator, which we're aware of. Bubble Bobble, which we're also aware of. Then there's this nonsense Demon's Revenge.
Rubbish.
Which we've never heard of. And Zarax. Now, these are all Firebird games. So, they're clearly it's a little bit of light advertising. But the last 2 were never on the C64. Demon's Revenge and Zarax. No C64 releases for them. That gives you a clue as to where this came from. There was Spectre and Amstrad versions of those games. So this did not originate from the C64. So, and 2 of the posts in the background were never released. So we really getting me like, what's this game? Anyway. You load the posters separately from tape, but the game itself is exactly the same no matter what picture you choose. The title screen offers 12 difficulty levels split into 3 groups, these being Kid Stuff, Smart Alec, and Mensa only. Essentially what this means is that the higher up you go, the more panels there are in each puzzle, and the more jumbled it is, but the more time you also get to figure it out. So the basic level 1, should we say difficult level 1, has 60 seconds and it's split into 4 panels, so it's dead simple. Then it's 6 panels, 8 panels, so on and so on and so forth. Once you've chosen which difficulty level you want, the game appears. And what we have here is another Spectrum game masquerading as a C64 game. This is someone's written a really, really good Spectrum emulator. They're obviously using the Karnov engine and just put it onto the C64. You play Pat and you control him as he moves freely over the picture on his ladder. which is kind of weird. I don't know how he's doing it. It's like his ladder must be on wheels or something. And
so stupid.
It's just ridiculous. So the image itself as well, where you've got Pat, it's seen through a window for some reason with some kind of 3D-esque yellow blocks on either side. I don't understand this. I don't understand this layout.
Don't try.
Beneath the main window is the difficulty level you're on, and then your lives, indicated by little Pat icons. And either side of these, the percentage of the puzzle you have correct, and the time left to complete it as it counts down. Pat has 5 lives, and random objects will also fly around the puzzle, and if they hit you, you will lose one of them. As you move Pat, you can push the pieces of the puzzle up, down, left or right by holding fire and pushing in that direction. So like you would a sliding block puzzle, essentially. You got to get, you have to get the picture in all the pieces in the right place to solve the puzzle. If you get the puzzle solved in the time limit, Pat does a little dance, there's a little bit of music, and that difficulty level is given a tick on the main screen, and then you can pick another one and do it again with more panels. If you choose another picture, you lose all your ticks though. So even though it's all the same process you go through, that's annoying. I don't know. I didn't go back to a previous one, so I don't know. Should you run out of time, it's game over and you have to try again. There's a sign for a toilet in the bottom right of the play area because it scrolls around. Like I said, you can't see all the picture. So this background image is scrolling around. Scroll down to the bottom right. It just says toilet. And if you press fire down there, you will then, the whole picture will appear. So you can see what the picture is supposed to be and where the actual sort of different panels are. So you can try and sort of work out what it is. And then you go back to playing it. And that's it. The music from the title screen onwards through all the little ditties that play and anything else oral is painful on the ears. The visuals are just a Spectrum game, single colour backgrounds and sprites. Pat is a big round thing with spotty dungarees and a massive flat cap, which is odd actually because on the front cover he's a tall lanky thing. So it makes no sense whatsoever. The controls are slow. It's almost impossible to see the enemy objects in the background as everything is one colour. It's all the same colour. So the enemies that go around you, the background, everything, it's all, white and black. The odd little bit of red every now and then, on some blue on the background, but you can't see these objects moving around because the way that the screen scrolls around so jerkily, they just merge in with the background. It's rubbish and horrible. The scrolling is, like I said, as you move, it's jerky. Has this effect for moving the puzzle pieces around, so as you slide them up and down, they're like dig 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 dig. It's like, oh, this is awful. The layout of the screen is cramped. Not being able to see the whole puzzle at any one time is frustrating and annoying, and having to start from scratch should you run out of time and have to suffer the intro music and death music is just too much. This is a bad budget game as they're simply not taking advantage of the C64's capabilities in any way. I mean, it's a sliding block puzzle. We've seen these before. We had better these. I mean, go back to Spitting Images. Yeah. Which is the same kind of thing, which is way better. Because why was that way better? Because you had all the picture on the board at one point, on the screen at once. This is so ridiculously bad. Why put it in a window and having a sort of floating, and he is fat, there's no way around it sort of thing, a floating fat board, what are they called?
Bill poster.
Bill poster. Yeah, someone like, just floating around on a ladder. It makes no sense. It's stupid. The game is ugly. It sounds terrible. It plays badly. It scrolls jerkily. It's crap. It's just been ported over from the Spectrum. We've got something. We had Zamzara this month. That was also a budget title, pretty much same price. And look how cool and fast and colourful and C64 looking Zamzara is. Yes, there's no reason for this to be ported over. No reason whatsoever. And to not even actually, maybe we should do some games that the C64 owners might recognise as some of the second, fourth and fifth posters. Nah, just stick stupid Demon's Revenge and Xarax on. They don't care. It makes no sense. Maybe they'll go buy them. They can't buy them. Oh yeah, that's stupid advertising. Advertise something that they can't buy. Who thought that was a good idea? Idiots.
Genius.
This is rubbish. Rubbish. I hated it. Awful. What did it get? 19%. Too much. I hated this and everything about it. What about you?
It's a monstrosity of the epic proportions. I mean, look, have you heard of multiverse theory, right? You've heard of that?
yeah, I'm well aware of it.
Right.
Yeah.
So multiverse theory, exactly. There's a version of every single component in lots of multi-universes and multiverses, each one with a slight variation. You get the idea of it, and there's made films about it. In every single one of those multiverse places, this game is shit. Every single one of them.
It's not a good there isn't
one. There isn't. No, there isn't. Not in any multiverse. Not anywhere. I mean, this would be crap in 1983. Yeah. It's utterly abysmal. I mean, I'm still struggling to figure out what exactly I saw. A puzzle game of some kind in there, maybe, but puzzles, you normally need to see the big picture. That's kind of how puzzles work. Some kind of single-coloured, half-human, half-strawberry creature moving around a ladder somehow, as opposed to going up and down a ladder. The ladder just floats around with the aim to paste posters or move them or something. Menaced by a cluster of badly realised skulls and rolling pins in a small game window with just, what is this? What does it all mean? Well, whatever it is, it's utterly awful. This is not a game, nor
should this piece of garbage ever have been realised or released for any kind of money. If even a single copy of this was sold, then somebody's been ripped off and badly, even at £2. This is one of the most dreadful looking and awful games on the C64. We've been saying this more and more, but it is. Alongside crap like Lee Enfield, Alice in Videoland, and all of its fellow brethren, whatever you might call those things. Win Bobner. This nonsense should have been denied a score from Zap. It is crap. It's a waste of magnetic tape. It's just a waste. The tape was a waste. It's just wasted tape. Shouldn't have happened.
Just leave it on the Spectrum and Amstrad. We don't need this. There's no reason for this.
If you'd have done a straw poll at the time and said, does anyone want a copy of Pasteman Pat? Firstly, I'd have said that's a crap pun. And secondly, no. So,
it is a crap
rubbish.
Pun. I wasn't even going to actually go there about the name. It's just...
Don't give it any more credit. We've already spoken about it far too much. It is bad.
Yeah, proper dog egg, that one. Really dog egg.
It's really bad. Really bad.
Let's move on quickly. Let's leave Pasteman Pat up that ladder forever. Let's move on to our next one. Hopefully it will be better. Is it better, Graham? I suppose it can't be any worse. It's Ghost Hunters. Ghost Hunters.
Can't be any worse. You.
Hold my pint.
So this is from Codemasters. Codemasters to the rescue. Good old faithful Codemasters. Codemasters, they've released some bits and bobs here and there. Some of it's been bad. Some of it's been good. Some of it's been bad. But it's Codemasters. Good old Codemasters. This was designed by the Oliver Twins. Good Spectrum games they made. Manager, for some reason, who's credited is Mark Baldock. The coders are David Blott and Andrew Blott. The Blotts. Thank you very much. The Blotts, everyone. The Blotts.
Hey.
The Blotts sounds like a kid's TV show from the 80s. The graphics are by Nigel Brown. The title screen, which is a strange credit to give someone, is Stephen Day. I think he did a lot of title screens back in the day. Stephen Day. And the musician are the Blotts again. It's excellent. That's why. And it is quite a good title screen, although I'll come to reasons why it's also strange. And the musicians here are the Blotts again. David and Andrew Blott. The Blotts. There they are, the Blotts.
The Blotts.
So the Blotts, from the Blot to the plot. From the Blot to the plots. The plot of the game. Professor Twilight, who owns Nightmare Mansion, offered a substantial reward for anyone who can rid his mansion of the many ghouls, ghosts, and zombies which inhabit it. Your twin brother, Chuck Studbuckle, took up the challenge 3 days ago and hasn't been seen since. God. It is your duty to go into this house of horrors and rescue him if he is still alive, or die horribly in the process if he isn't. Okay, that's weird. You enter through the front door and proceed from room to find Chuck. Obviously, many evil creatures will appear, causing your terror to increase. This is shown on the terrometer. A reading on this meter causes your vital macho energy to decrease. This is shown on your machometer. No, it isn't. It's just macho energy.
To be fair, some of this did actually make me laugh for the stupid names and the stupid stuff. And I was thinking, okay, this could be quite funny.
Yeah, and then the pain will begin. So it's important to destroy the creatures quickly or just plain old leave the room. Get out. Don't have to be there. Your macho energy doesn't have to be depleted if you don't want it to. To replenish lost energy, you can drink the bubbling cauldrons of magic potion, which you may find from time to time, or just stand around when there's no ghosts. I'll do it as well, slowly. There are many lifts in the mansion which you will need to use to explore the rooms. These must first be activated by finding the flashing objects that disguise the switches, such as the goblet and script, which may be nowhere near the lifts which they operate.
Yes.
All right. I can tell you, most of them aren't. So that's the plot of the bloody game. This is yet another conversion of a Spectrum game. Sorry, let me correct myself. Yet another conversion of a rubbish Spectrum game. Hang on, sorry. Let me clear my throat there. Yet another conversion of a rubbish Manic Miner-ish derivative Spectrum game. A game with many mysteries, this, Adrian. Why does it blend Rambo with Ghostbusters? Whoever wanted that? Or at least on its marketing material, anyway. No one ever wanted those things. Nobody. Rambusters.
Rambusters, yeah.
Why does your game sprite look nothing like the guy on the cover, or indeed on the game title screen, or even the game at all?
No, who's that guy on the left?
Why do you change into a monkey when you jump?
Don't know.
Why? Why does your macho energy deplete so quickly anyway? Why have that at all in a game like this?
What is it?
Why do you need it? Yeah, why do you have it? Why? The game is a Manic Miner style room-to-room thing with colourful, I guess, but small graphics. You must either defeat the baddies or get out. The longer they are there, the more terrified you become and the quicker your macho energy depletes. As I said, once this is depleted, you will be dead, along with your will to live and sense of both value and respect for Codemasters. You won't want to try again, that's for sure, as this game offers absolutely nothing new, a lot of things that are old and crappy, and none of them any fun whatsoever. The game starts with a title screen-ish, with a horrible slow piece of music straight from the BP 1983 Tune a Day book. The C64 has a 3-channel multi-voice SID chip, one of the most advanced 8-bit audio chips ever created. Be gone with your foul Spectrum bitonal audio laxatives. A Away with your shrill bleep-fueled mini-sick-inducing aura horror. Get in the sea with your nasty audio carbuncle tootlings. This also has a view of the UI that is confusing at best and crap at, well, also best. To the left, the game logo, which is nothing like the logo on the box, and has the letter O highlighted for reasons.
Because it's O.
For reasons. Below that is a black and white high-res image of a Rambo-like character for no reason whatsoever.
Because he's the one off the cover shooting a brown,
cover, yeah.
shooting a man, what looks like a monk.
Exactly. Under that is your score and thermometer, and then the Codemasters logo. Adjacent to that is the Macho Energy Bar, which isn't by the way, isn't some kind of protein bar that you can buy in the shop. Macho Energy Bar is a bar of energy that's called Macho. Just so we're clear about that. In the top right square is the game window, high score area with another version of the game title without the O highlighted and some animated spiders. You can select 3 for keyboard, joystick, or 1 or 2 for 1 or 2 player. Do this and your game will start. Okay. The words Ghost Hunters will appear. Just in case you can't see the title on the screen, or the previous ones on the 2 ones that are on the title screen. So in case you forget what it's called, Ghost Hunters appears. I'm guessing it's meant to be somebody saying it for some reason. This appears in a naff light blue box that is in the Commodore font. Even the words Score, Ghost Hunters, and Macho Energy are in a different font to that. Why? Yeah. Just use the same typeface. In the game window, there's a room with multiple levels, some token haunted mansion-style background scenery that looks crap and like a miniaturized version of Cauldron 2. It's colourful, but small and high-res, I think, most all of it. Character graphic type thing. On the bottom right is your character. You're never given a name, so I guess it's just Mr. Studbuckle, because you're never given a first name. You know your brother's name, but not his name.
Bob.
And it's Bob Studbuckle. And you can control him, and I say that in inverted commas, with the joystick. He looks nothing like the character on the game box or the screen. Indeed, he looks more like he's wearing dungarees to me. So this could be a Dex's Midnight Runners game. Could be. To move around, you push the joystick. Jump will see you maybe jumping up, maybe directionally, maybe not. Just it's a bit arbitrary, really.
Yeah.
Do exactly what you want when you want it to. Holding fire sees your crosshairs for your machine gun appear and bounce around uncontrollably for no reason. You can move it or slide it around, and you can shoot around at the baddies to kill them temporarily. You don't look like you're holding a machine gun at any point, so I'm not sure what you're shooting at or how you're doing it. You then progress around the rooms looking for Chuck by walking, going up pointlessly difficult lifts and steps and switching things on. You can top up your macho energy here and there, but I wouldn't advise that you do that because that will prolong your life. And trust me, you'll want to die quickly in this game before your self-esteem does. For the short time you're alive, you'll be menaced by an array of single-colour character sprites, skeletons, demons, etc. Some you can kill, some you can't. Why? Why can't I kill the little rat things? Why? I've got a machine gun. Stupid. Why include characters you can't kill in a game where they take away your energy really badly? Don't make that a thing then. Anyway, trust me, if they do kill you quickly, they're doing you a favour by ending things more swiftly for this. And that, as they say, is that for me. Even at budget price, this is just bloody terrible. Crappy tiny graphics, rubbish background, slow responses, naff puzzles and naff level design, awful enemies, little to no logic, token blips and sound effects. And to top it all, it's next to bloody impossible anyway. The constant drain of your macho energy will see you dead before you get to the second or third screen, even if you want to, which you won't, I can assure you of that. This is reprehensible garbage for a C64 game and proof once again, like we need more proof really, that this kind of fidgety high-res crapola has no place on the C64. Seemingly these Oliver Twin games are best kept for the old best on the Spectrum deal. Works for me, keep them there. This is crap. It's awful. Did you like it?
No. I mean, I'll come to why, but there is an idea here. The idea behind it, the sort of concept of the thing. There's a couple of bits of this that I thought, yeah, okay. But the execution of it is very, very poor. Very poor. It looks really it looks horribly dated by this point in time, having more in common with games like Jet Set Willy, as you said, and the like. It just looks like one of those. Yeah. It's come from that
very Spectrum.
That mold. Yeah, very Spectrum. And as I said, with Pasteman Pat being in the same issue as something like Zamzara, shows this up for what it is. The things that I do, not the first time, not the only time we'll see it this episode, but I'd like the 2-player co-op mode option. Although that just Although that just means that 2 of you will be unhappy.
It's just sharing the misery, right?
Yeah, it's like, at least then you could have a laugh at this. But so basically what that means is one of you controls the player and one of you controls the crosshairs.
Yeah, it's a nice touch.
So that's okay. I mean, that's nice. The plot is the same as Luigi's Mansion by Nintendo.
I was trying to think, is it the same as Luigi's Mansion?
It's exactly the same. Mario gets kidnapped, he's his brother, Luigi goes in to rescue him. It's the same plot.
And also, I was thinking when I was playing it, and I was trying to think, is this not basically the same as the game that we played in the last episode that was a Spectrum conversion?
Quite possibly. We've played loads of these.
Yeah, it was just, it sort of brought one to mind, a recent one that we played where we hated that as well because it was kind of a crappy one-colour spectrum thing. And it's
like I said, I mean, it's the same plot as Luigi's Mansion, but obviously Luigi's Mansion is brilliant. This is clearly not. This is not fun to play in any way. It's slow, dull, and ugly. Not for me, this. And weirdly, looking at this seems to have been released in 1987. So I've no idea what it's doing turning up now in Zap. I don't know whether they got
Very
hold
strange.
of it. But it seems to all versions seem to have come out in 1987. So I don't know why this has just suddenly popped up in 1989, but it should have stayed in 1987. And even in 1987, this is terrible. So that doesn't excuse it. It's a bad game. The cover is crazy. There is Rambo, what looks like shooting a brown monk, while Barlow from Salem's Lot looks on.
It's stupid.
And in the background, there's a couple of other there's a red and a white ghost. It's very odd. It's very well. In the bottom right hand side, there's a couple of gold plates.
It ain't good.
I don't know what's happened to that cover. Yeah, this is dreadful. Dreadful thing. Let's move on. We've still got one more for this part. So yeah, let's hopefully things pick up a little bit maybe. And this is SDI. SDI. Bit of an odd one, this. An odd one. This is SDI, or Strategic Defence Initiative, or even Global Defence, as it was sometimes known. It goes by many names, this. In Germany, it's Johann. In England, it is John. It's all over the place, this one. Originally an arcade release in 1987 by Sega, and was clearly inspired by the Strategic Defence Initiative, or Star Wars, of the Ronald Reagan era of American politics. Indeed, from the instructions themselves, it reads, SDI, Strategy and Arcade at its best. This classic Sega arcade hit in the true Ronald Reagan Strategic Defence Initiative style. Is that a style? Is there a thing as
style?
Is there a thing as the strategic? Well, he's really rocking the Strategic Defence Initiative style there. What's that all about? What's that mean?
No.
No. Test your skills in both offensive and defensive warfare to the limit. Well, it's all out, and this bit made me laugh. It's all out nuclear war. You can't read. It just reads it's all out nuclear war, but you can't say it's all out something without it being like some kind of happy jolly thing. It's all out nuclear war, and your mission is defend your country from enemy nuclear space weapons. No, they're not. They're not space weapons, and save the planet from imminent catastrophe.
They're ground launched.
No, enemy nuclear space weapons. I mean, I don't know. Enough. I think somebody's been watching Superman 4 or 3 or something. Probably. Anyway, this was ported to numerous systems, and the C64 port was handled by none other than Source, who you may remember did the conversion of Desolator, Halls of Kairos, that weird commando thing where you went around slapping enemies, which I didn't mind, but you weren't so keen on.
Yeah, slap Mando, yeah.
Yeah. As ports go, this is certainly on the achievable side. And most of the game, bar the intro sequence, which sees New York get nuked, of the arcade, has been squeezed into this here into a single load. So the game opens up with a title sequence akin to the arcade. It's got big SDI, big angular letters flashing away. Massive. But it's exactly the same as the arcade game, and the name Strategic Defence Initiative underneath them, whilst a rather weak tune plays away. That's not from the arcade game. I don't know what the tune is. I did listen to all the way through the arcade music, but I couldn't tell if this was a version of one of the tunes from it or not. It sounds like it should be, but I don't think it is. It's an odd thing. Either way, it's not great. Pressing the space bar gets you to the options. I can't remember who actually did the music. It was noted by someone. Let me just check. I should have wrote that down. Bear with me. The musician was Paul Summers, by the way. Sorry about that. Sorry, Paul. We usually mention you people, but you probably didn't want to because it's not a great tune. A press of the spacebar gets you to the options, and you can choose a one-player game, two-player game, and more interestingly, you can choose to play with keys, one joystick or two joysticks, making this game a rather interesting cooperative game. Second in consecutive. Weird how these things come in pairs sometimes, how these just sort of happen. So I'll go into how that works in a little bit and how the game all plays out in a bit. So once done, you're into the game. So the UI is at the top and the bottom. It's on the select screen as well. It's one of them ones where the UI is omnipresent, apart from on that SDI bit, and shows player 1 and player 2's score, the number of lives left at the top. And at the bottom is the stage you're on and a massive damage bar that will slowly fill up. And, you don't want that to fill up. The game puts you in control of a satellite in space. Essentially, this is it's kind of a scrolling shooter. It's a weird side-scrolling shooter game, but not quite. So I'll come to why in a bit. So you control a satellite in space, and it starts off with what it calls the offensive stage. And as you zip around, you'll also see a cursor moving about around you as well. tapping fire will shoot at the cursor, but if you hold down the fire button, then this will lock the satellite in place and then allow you to move the cursor around the screen freely, much faster and more freely, and you're constantly firing at it. So essentially, you kind of lock yourself in place and move your cursor to aim at everything that's going on, because from all sides of the screen, various weapons and enemies will appear. These range from missiles to satellites to bombers and all kinds of things, sort of UFOs, all sorts of stuff. And you need to move your cursor over them and shoot everything whilst also keeping yourself out of danger. Not too dissimilar, I suppose, to something like there's elements of missile command, I suppose, in this a little bit. So you need to let go of the fire from time to time to move the satellite out of the way of incoming objects, because if anything hits the satellite, then you lose a life, and that's how this game works. This goes on until the stage is clear. As you do, there's usually a planet, maybe something that sort of scrolls across in the background, or the star field and stuff. It's set in space. It is what it is. If you manage to kill everything, and you can do it, then you get a perfect round, a 20,000 bonus, along with a dancing duck, which is straight out of the arcade game. But, here's what it is. You get a dancing duck. If you didn't kill everything, then you progress onto the defensive stage. So this is essentially what it is like, you can imagine this like missiles are coming towards wherever your home base is, and you've got to try and knock them all out. If you knock them all out, great, you go on to the next defense stage. If you don't, some get through, then you go to a sort of defensive stage. Imagine, I suppose it's like a sort of more longer drawn out version of Black Hawk.
Yes.
In that you've got that sort of two sort of screen sort of thing.
Yeah.
Then, so if you go to the defensive stage, and also as well, anything that gets past your damage meter starts to fill up as well. So the defensive stage, bombs and missiles will rain down your planet. You kind of get this planet that comes up from the bottom of the screen, sort of both brown and yellow. And you essentially just have to protect it from the missile stuff raining down from the top of the screen. Exactly the same kind of controls, except you just move the cursor around and shoot and destroy everything. Should you take hits or things make it past the offensive stage, then as I said, your damage bar slowly fills up, and it's game over if it fills completely and something gets past and hits your ground base. Yes, that's it. Done. You're done. No matter how lives you've got left, it's game over. You've lost your home base. If you manage to either destroy everything on the offensive or kill everything in the defensive stage, it's on to stage 2 and then another offensive stage and so on, and the waves get progressively harder and so on and so forth. It's an arcade game, so that's what it is. You should repeat these 2 stages on until you die, until it gets too much for you. As you play through it, there are power-ups which you can collect. There's like a little sort of floating green thing, and it's got like a little P at the bottom of it, and if you shoot that and then manage to collect it with your satellite before it floats off screen, you can get extra speed, you can get multiple cursors to move about, and you can get extra firepower, which means bigger explosions where you shoot. Very reminiscent, like I said, of Missile Command. It's very easy to pick up and understand what you're doing once you get your head around it. And in some ways, it reminded me of sort of modern mouse and keyboard shooters, akin to sort of Hotline Miami in its control scheme, where you aim at the mouse cursor. You hold down WASD and move your thing, and you move your cursor around, and you're forward facing it and you shoot at that. Almost not quite a dual stick shooter, but sort of a cursor shooter. So it's one of them.
Yeah.
So it reminded me of that. The interesting thing here is the 2 joystick mode, which allows one player to control the satellite and another to control the cursor. And unlike in Ghost Hunters, which was painful to do, that would have been actually quite a lot of fun in this, I think, because this actually game is not too bad. So if you had one, shooting, because you hold down fire, you both shoot, but you've got one trying to sort of keep away from all the enemies, one's trying to go towards the enemies. So it's quite a nice difference in sort of playstyle. So that's quite actually a nice addition to this. And the closest thing I can think of something akin to this is the Catalite in Whizball, perhaps, or the Golem in Druid, which is not the same thing, but is that second player controlling something else, which is not, doesn't take damage kind of thing, where you need to work together in order to progress. I think that's a really good addition to the game. I don't know if that is in the arcade game, but here, it's a very nice addition. So you can actually, and I think you can have 2 players. So I'm not even sure if you can have 4 players playing this. So it would be quite interesting to play.
Idea.
I don't know. The visuals in the game are okay. Everything is medium res. It's a bit chunky. Yeah, everything is our favourite medium res. Nothing stands out, but nothing is too rubbish. The missiles look like missiles. The bombers, everything's a bit scaled all over the place. The missiles are massive. The bombers are really small. Your satellite's quite big, but it's not terrible. It's an approximation of the arcade game that it was based on. And the game itself is perfectly fine. It's just a little dull. There's no in-game music, which I think it could have done with, and the waves of enemies are just a little slow to arrive. And then factor into that, the collision detection on things hitting your satellite is a little on the punishing side. I was pretty sure that some of the things floated past me, but they still maybe blow up, and that's a bit annoying. The blame with all this really lies with the original arcade game, which shares the same issues. Just being a little dull to really hold interest for long. This is not really a game I was familiar with in the arcade. It's never something I've heard spoken of very much. I did go and have a quick go on MAME it's exactly what this is. It's not too different from what I was playing on the C64 version. It's just dull, which, so whilst this is a perfectly decent arcade conversion, it's only as good as the source material, and that material was never that interesting in the first place. If you're converting something that's a bit boring, expect boring. And this just gets a bit boring pretty quickly. And what did it get? It got 64%. Probably about right, because the conversion itself is decent, but the game itself is just dull. What did you think?
Well, firstly, let me just get that bloody horrible music out of the way to start. What a dirge that was. Ugh. The game then, I suppose, well, you know what? It had some nice ideas and pretty good looking graphics, actually, in its own way, its own logic. It's all, like you said, very medium res, but they look like the arcade, and it isn't a bad conversion of the arcade because I went and had a look. I think it's just missing some key parts of the arcade logic, I think. The missile command style part doesn't quite work on a single joystick. I think this is a game you would really enjoy it with two people and two people playing it. When you're sort of holding your fire button to move your satellite and then moving your target around and doing it that way, it starts to work against you. The more that becomes on the screen a bit later, by level 3 or 4 or a bit later into it, you don't really stand a chance because it's almost impossible to really do it. But that said, it does look the part. And what I'll give it that, because it does look quite good. There's enough to sustain a reasonable shooter for a while. Probably works better with, like I said, with 2 joysticks. At full price, though, I don't know. You're sort of lining yourself up in a very difficult alleyway there. As much as this is quite a good shooter, is it in the same league as your Armalites and stuff like that? Yeah. And that's the benchmark for these kind of arcade style shooters. I know it's a different variation of shooter as such, but your price point is the same. So you're looking at the shelf. Am I going to buy this conversion of an old arcade I've never heard of, which looks half decent, or am I going to go for Armalite, which blew everyone's minds? Well, but it's not without merit. I have to give it credit where credit's due. It looks the part, plays like the arcade. It's very similar. It's all there. It's just, I don't know if it's something I'm going to want to keep going back to. I think you'd need to be 2-player with this, because 1 player, you're going to get bored quite quickly of it. But it did sort of look like an arcade. It was a good approximation, so it's not all bad. 64% is about right, I think.
Yeah, that's like I said. Yeah, exactly. It's a good port of an average arcade game.
Arcade, yeah. And it seems to be the way of it. We've had a lot of average ports and bad ports.
Just porting anything you can, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's just, obviously it's I know. And I'd never really heard of it. As soon as it was, when I read that it was a big Sega thing, I'm like, oh, okay.
It was released by Activision as well. I don't think I mentioned that, but yeah, it came from Activision.
Yeah, but it's it's just a bit expensive, I think, for nowadays. Well, not nowadays, but back in 1989 days.
Yeah. Is what it is. There you go. That's SDI in Strategic Defense Initiative style. I'm going to start dressing that way. See what
this is
means.
not STI.
Dripping.
Hey, just no. No.
And on that drippy note, we're going to take a quick break.
You're a bad man, Mills.
And we'll come back dried out after that break, and we'll be getting on. We'll be looking at the albums released in March 1989. So please do stick around. We'll see you in a bit. And we are back. Let's get into some albums. March 1989. Number 1, Graham, for the first 2 weeks of the month is Simply Red with A New Flame. Yep, they're back.
I didn't like the old one. I didn't like the old Flame. No. Third album, this. Third. Massive, ridiculously multi-platinum, multi-million selling hit. He's 63 years old, Mick Hucknall now.
Yeah. Which is
apparently, and I've gone into deep, I won't go into the science, but there's a lot of science behind this. This is 282 in bread years.
Yeah.
He's considered an ancient elder in the bread village.
Yeah, you can tell he's like you can with a tree. If you cut off a slice of him and count the red rings.
Never cut a slice of Mick Hucknall off. Because it's like the Thing, it just grows another Mick Hucknall.
Well, exactly, yeah. And then you've got 2 Hucknalls.
Exactly.
It's like the saying, 2 Hucknalls is worth 1 in the hand.
I don't think I'd want any of Mick Hucknall in my hand. And you know what's weird is that that's how he was able to be at so many places at once and please so many women. Most of the women, and I'm sorry if you were one of these people, were actually, you were sleeping with a bread duplicate, what they call a bruplicate, because he was able to, basically clone himself in bread and he gave it some intelligence, and they just went out there.
They just went out.
They're out there. There's still some out there. You never actually collected them all back up. There's still some out there just doing their own thing. If you go to some places, you'll find a bred Hucknall. They're just doing menial tasks now. They're like Terminators when the mission was done. They just go and become carpet sellers or curtain fixtures, that kind of thing. Weird.
He was known to shed cobs.
I'm glad you said shed, because that's I would think of something else, but good. That's good.
Shed, just dropped them off. Anyway, there you go. That was the first 2 weeks, if you simply read.
How many of that? What's that in bread years?
I don't know. Well, if he's 63 and it's 282 in bread years, then quick bit of maths would be like about, 4 parsecs.
That'll do. Yeah.
There you go. For the following week, it was Anything for You by Gloria Estefan and the Miami Sound Machine. If you're unsure if this is even an album,
find it.
It's actually a re-release of Let It Loose, the 1987 album Let It Loose, which was re-released in Europe in 1988, 1989.
Sneaky.
So it's a re-release under a different name of the same album, as far as I could make out.
That's well cheeky, isn't it?
Yeah.
Miami Sound Machine.
Yeah, there we go. It'll be, we've probably talked about Let It Loose before, but there you go, it's that one. More importantly, though, for the final week of March 1989, is Like a Prayer at number 1 by Madonna.
Yes, it came romping in there, didn't it?
Yes, it did, yes. It sold a lot. On the back of her going to war with the Pope, remember?
Yes, she will. It was controversial, as we said last time, wasn't it? And this is the 4th studio album, apparently, Madonna. She worked with Stephen Bray, Patrick Leonard, and Prince on this album, with her co-writing and co-producing all of the songs. So considered her most introspective release at the time, apparently. There you go.
All right, okay.
Interesting, yeah. It's not an album I remember a lot of, actually. I remember that track, but I don't remember a lot of the other stuff.
No, I remember the singles, like Cherish and things like that.
Don't like that one.
There's quite a few singles off this, but I probably did listen to the album, but I think by this point, I was tuning out of Madonna a bit. I love Like a Prayer, the single, and I thought it was a great single, but I think the rest of it was passing me by a little bit by this point.
Yeah, so of course, you like the single, love the advert, because it was a big, long advert, wasn't it, at a certain point? I don't remember when it was on, but I'm sure I remember seeing a really long advert, so...
For Pepsi?
Yeah.
Yeah, but back then I was a Coke advocate, so I would have been like...
It doesn't stop you seeing, though, does it?
It does, but it would have put me off buying it. It would have put me off buying it and liking it, because I was pro-Coke, I was in the Pepsi Coke war.
Pro-Coke. There was no war. It's in your head, you maniac.
There was in my house. In my bedroom.
Well, there was a taste challenge, I suppose. Not a war as much as a challenge. But there was the Pepsi challenge, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Well, you'd have passed that with flying colours. You didn't drink Pepsi, so you'd have known straight away.
I would. They tasted really different. They do taste... I don't know how anyone failed the Pepsi Coke taste challenge. It's like, they're two different things.
It's impossible to get them mixed up, really.
Yeah, it really is.
And it's always the pub... Isn't it a weird pub question to get asked when you ask for a soft drink of a certain brand? Coca-Cola is the only one where they offer you an alternative Coca-Cola. If you go, can I have a lemonade? They don't go, we've only got Johnson's lemonade. It's like, because they go, if I ask for a Diet Coke or a Coke Zero, they go, we've only got Pepsi Max. So just bring me a diet drink then. I'm not brand, don't care. Does it matter?
Put it in my hand. Leave the cup.
Oh, I can't possibly drink it if you don't have Coke Zero. It's exactly the same as all the other diet drinks.
Yes. Anyway. On that note, 5th of March, in at number 5 is Stop by Sam Brown, ironically. Stop!
Yeah, I remember this. Do you remember it?
I didn't, and then I listened to the song, and then I did.
Yeah.
It came back. You gotta stop.
Yeah.
Before
yeah, exactly.
Break my heart.
That was a big hit for her. I think it was a big hit for her. I don't remember anything else by Sam Brown, but I suspect she's one of those people that pops up all over the place and we've just erased her from time and space because of reasons.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, it was what it is. Number 28 is Oranges and Lemons by XTC. He's popped up again. Yes. We spoke about them recently, didn't we? Because I think they had a single out. Probably single off this, I guess.
I thought they were like a rap band.
And I thought they were a punk band.
Which is what they are. Well, not just punk.
Well, I knew they were punk. I'm sure they were. They used to be punk, but now they're...
now they've branched out. You see, this is the 11th studio album.
11th?
And the second double album by the band. So while this album is primarily pop and rock, there's other styles here too, such as jazz, reggae, hard rock, Middle Eastern music, and Zarian Sukus, which is a form of Congo rumba. Which I felt...
Make that up?
No, that's real. That's genuine. That's a genuine thing. That's not me making that up. Okay. That's real. That's a real thing. I've never would have looked at the punk band called XTC and considered them Masters of the Congan Rumba. But it turns out that was the thing that they did. Cool. Hats off to you for doing that. That's branching out, that is.
Yeah.
That's diverse. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. Not something I would have...
Could just imagine the record execs when they got that double album. Brilliant. What are you doing here? Zarian what?
Zarian Sukas? Is that like couscous?
I thought, isn't that something you order in a takeaway? Anyway.
Quite possibly. Congan Rumba. Weird.
That's it.
At number 30 is Radio 1 by Jimi Hendrix.
Aye, good old Jimi Hendrix. The classic, the man, Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah, a bit late.
Yeah, well, it's not so much a live album, really, is it? Well, he isn't. The album
not at this
was recorded live. Yeah, it was released posthumously, obviously, by Rykodisc and compiles tracks recorded between February and December in 1967 for broadcast by the BBC Radio. Now, I wanted to take a little bit of just a moment while we've got a Jimi Hendrix record here to just have a little nod of appreciation for the genius of Jimi Hendrix. So now, some people like him, some people don't. Bit of a divisive figure in the old, world of musicians and such. Most guitarists generally, a rock guitarist certainly have a nod to Hendrix, and I think they have to have. Mm-hmm. He was a self-taught. He played left-handed on a right-handed guitar, so it was strung upside down. So he essentially played upside down. He couldn't read music. He played by ear and hands and teeth, but he learned by ear, shall we say? Yeah. And in the late 1966, he performed in a club that was attended by, at the same club was Eric Clapton, John Lennon, Paul McCartney, Jeff Beck, and Pete Townsend, and Mick Jagger. They were all there at the same time. And a lot of them had gone, not necessarily to see Jimi Hendrix, but this rumor of this crazy talented guitarist had sort of, obviously escaped. Apparently, the reaction was crazy. Eric Clapton was, who at that time and still is, obviously, was a very accomplished guitarist in his own right, and so were all those other musicians. He was blown away by the skills, and so much so was Paul McCartney that he personally recommended him for the Monterey Pop Festival, which is where he played a very legendary performance and famously set fire to his guitar and burned it at the end, which is all them rock star things you hear about, like the Who kicking all their amps and all the explosions. And the famous things you always hear, people always see, even now it's kind of imitate it. The smashing up of the guitar, the setting fire to things, the playing guitar with your teeth and behind your head, and all that stuff that people do jokingly. That was where that happened, the actual performance. It's quite incredible when you watch it. It's all on YouTube as well, which is pretty cool. And because of that performance, that led to him, or the performances tied together in some way. He also obviously played at Woodstock famously, where apparently after no sleep for 3 days, he famously went on and played the national anthem using extreme distortion, which has become like that famous, famous, played that.
It's used at the start of the Spec Ops: The Line game, that is.
That's right.
To great effect.
Yeah, and because it's considered not just he doesn't just play the national anthem, he plays it with such distortion, such bashing, angry tones that it's considered almost an anti-war message in its own right.
Yeah, exactly.
Make of that what you will.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy, crazy clever. The mad thing out of all of that, he's probably off his head most of the time when he's playing. Pretty much, if you look at the video of him, pretty clearly on something. No, he ain't just in good times row there. He's having something going on. But his approach to playing guitar is no rules, no holding back, extreme natural technical ability, and massive hands. And that isn't a German that he lugs his equipment around.
Hello.
Just an incredibly, incredibly talented guitarist, and one that I've sort of stood a long way from and admired from a distance, but recently having revisited and almost every bit of Hendrix music I could find, not just for this podcast, but just because I'm trying to educate myself with musicians that I gave a passing nod to over time, and then sort of tried to reappreciate things. And I could tell you the guy is a genius. The guy is an absolute gifted musical genius, and no wonder people who stand in reverie. I don't know how he's figuring out how to make the guitar play in the way it does. To him, that's how you play a guitar, and that's how it sounds. I love seeing natural ability manifest like that. Tragedy that he died in the way he did. It was inevitable, though, with that kind of rock star supernova kind of idea. But an amazing talent, and I just wanted to have a nod of appreciation because I don't think we come across Jimi Hendrix records very often when we do this. So good old Jimmy. Good old Jimmy. Yeah.
Good old Jimmy. And at number 60 is Karen White with Karen White by Karen White.
Self-titled.
Yeah, by Karen White.
Yeah, American R&B singer.
Who is?
Karen White.
Karen White, did we say? Karen White. Yeah, Karen White, everyone.
Karen White, everyone. Here she is. The one Trap Family Singers.
Yay.
But Superwoman became her biggest hit in the UK, reaching number 11, apparently. I don't think we've had that one, or we probably will at some point.
Probably will. I'm not aware of it. 12th of March, number 3, The Singular Adventures of the Style Council by The Style Council.
There's nobody in their band called Malcolm. And as far as I'm aware, it's like a legal rule to have a council Mally. So they don't have one because every council I've ever known's had a Malcolm working at it, the council Mally. There's always a council Mally. It's like it's the rules.
That sounds like Town Council Malice. Council Mally.
But you have to have a council Mally. Do they have they're a council? Do they have a Mally?
I don't know. Was the one with the beginning of Superman?
Probably.
The Council of Elders, Joel, Carbell, Malcolm,
Mally,
Cowbell.
There has to be a council Mally.
There has to be someone on the what was it, Krypton called Cowbell.
Look, there has to be a council Mally, whichever way you swing it. Anyway, do you know what's weird about this greatest hits album, which is what this is? It says on the box Volume 1, and they never released a Volume 2.
Good.
I suppose we should be grateful for some things.
Yeah, we should
Star
be.
Council. No, we're grateful for the Star Council not producing something. Unusual, that. But I don't think the words great and hit are something you can apply to their output. Not for me, anyway.
Not for me either. No.
Silent S on that hit, I think.
Number 45, Fruit at the Bottom by Wendy and Lisa.
Your thing?
No. Who are they?
They're the duo that I think performed a lot with Prince, didn't they?
You remember them?
Yeah, I think they were very much of the Prince oeuvre. Went on to do their own solo thing, of which this is an album produced. I don't know if it's produced by Prince or anything like that, but it's something to do with that stuff.
Not for me. Now, this next one's really odd sort of thing, but number 75 is Helter Skelter by Vow Wow.
Random, this one.
Yeah, they're a Japanese rock band formed in 1975. Originally consisted of guitarist and vocalist Kyoji Yamamoto, Mitsuhiro Saito, bassist Kenji Sano, and drummer Toshihiro Nimi, and one of the first Japanese metal bands. And like you, never heard of them.
Nope. Never even drifted across my transom, ever.
No, but that is some massive hair.
Yeah, I did a little bit of, because I was intrigued. I
quite like the song. I listened to a couple of songs off the album. I thought it was pretty good.
I thought Japanese metal formed in 1975, so these guys would have been around during all of the the
proggy
big
stuff,
the big proggy bands,
the
Rush and the big 70s bands, and also then of course your Led Zepps and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So and they were doing their thing, and their thing is pretty cool. The hair is wild on those.
It's
Japanese
massive.
metal
I've never
bands.
seen anything like it. It's like candy floss.
Now it led me down a rabbit hole, and that rabbit hole was Japanese metal. What do you know about it? And I thought I know nothing about Japanese metal. And I knew they had samurai swords, not the bands obviously, but Japanese metal was what's my. But other than that, what did I know about it? Anyway, like you say, seriously big hair. I mean, like big. Like scary. And like, I mean, they've taken everything. It's like they've merged several different genres from European music, not just European maybe, but just world music, but mainly the rock hair and the sort of new age makeup, merged it with a bit of kabuki, I think. And then you end up with these, on some of the bands, not all of them look like that. Some of them just like metal bands, but they've got kind of when they're glammed up, they're like mega glam and mega pristine. Crazy interesting. And I found this article about the 50 greatest Japanese metal bands of all time. Some of those band pictures are very odd. Let's just say it. Some of the bands themselves, very strange. Some of them, very progressive in ways that our bands were not at that time. So we'll put the link in the show notes. I would recommend you go and check it out. It's very interesting. It's a world I knew nothing about. Literally nothing. Crazy.
No.
Totally. I was totally Eurocentric for my music and America-centric. Japan, I never even looked that way, which is terrible, isn't it?
Well, I don't think you can knock yourself too much. You only had, remember, we had access to what was given to us. So I don't think, I'm pretty sure, I don't remember seeing anything of these bands. I don't, going to record fairs, going to like looking through Andy's records. I don't remember anything like, Japanese metal section.
No, true. I don't remember that.
Yeah, I would as well. But I wouldn't kick yourself too much. It was just like these things were there was nothing covering this. And so we would have, maybe Metal Hammer did something on it now and again, or Kerrang, but I very much doubt it. So, but it's interesting.
I'd be interested. I'd see if Brown Sauce knew anything about it. I mean, this could be an entire market strand for his business that he's never even thought of.
Yeah, it could be. But I don't know. That'd be strange. Anyway, yeah.
So I've got a button here. I can just press it and it summons him like a cloud. It's weird.
Like a clown.
I won't do it now.
You say cloud or clown?
Column A, column B. The thing is, if I do summon him, he's not always ready. Sometimes he's on the toilet and he just, instantly appears. I don't want that. I don't want that here. So I won't do it right now.
It's all right if he does because he can just cut and he'll be ready.
He might be able to, but I ain't. I can't cut that out of my eyes. I can't not see it. Once it's seen, you can't unsee it. Trust me.
That's
people who
true.
listen to this podcast, I've seen things. that you people wouldn't believe
Absolutely.
with brown sauce. And I can't unsee them, and I don't want to think about it anymore. But
I wish they would be going like
I'm not going to press
rain.
this. I'm not going to press the summon button just in case. Put it that way.
Probably best not to.
No.
19th of March. In at number 3 with Southside by Texas.
Nah, not for me. It was a very popular album. It did quite good sales, but
yeah, I don't
peaked at number 3 apparently. Yeah, that's the big track off it.
They sound like what they sound like. Shouldn't like that.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. In at number 5 is 101 or 101 by Depeche Mode. It's 101 in it. This was a live album documentary film by Depeche Mode. It chronicles the final leg of the band's Music for the Masses tour and the final show on 18th June 1988 at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, California. I think it's called 101 because they did 101 dates.
Wow,
101 shows, I think. I think that's why it's called 101, if I remember. I do actually have the double vinyl album of this still. It's one of the, I've kept them on vinyl, and I have that. This is an astonishingly good live album.
I can imagine it is,
and the thing is as well, it's like you listen to this and it's like just amazing song after amazing song after you realise like all the sort of albums they'd done before this, because Time Music Mass, all that kind of stuff, Some Great Reward. You just listen to all the great singles off it and you go, bloody hell, it's just, and this is before we get to Violator and Songs of Faith and Devotion and everything after. This is the first part.
Wow. Yeah.
Depeche Mode are sort of possibly, they are clearly up there with the greatest British bands ever.
Oh, absolutely.
For consistency and quality, even their new stuff is actually pretty good as well.
No argument from me. Stuff is ace.
So, yeah. And this live album is a sort of an encapsulation of that first few years, from going from Just Can't Get Enough, the Vince Clarke album, to becoming this mega sort of weird like S&M, this weird sort of sexualization of stuff, and just they're just incredible band, Depeche Mode. But there you go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I might track down the documentary film and watch it because it sounds. I don't know if I've ever seen the documentary film. I know it's just a live show, but I'll do like watching those live shows.
Is it Anton Corbijn? I think he did.
It could be, but either way, I'll check it down.
Because he's the guy who did all the photography for him and who directed like Enjoy the Silence and everything. I think it's Anton
absolutely. Because
Corbijn.
I don't think if it wasn't for Depeche Mode, and you might agree with me or not on this, I don't think you would have Muse if you didn't have a Depeche Mode, because Muse in some ways seem like almost a follow-on from Depeche Mode. I know Depeche Mode is still going, but I don't think because some of their albums are that kind of more not experimental, but the kind of concept album type idea, isn't it? For there and their big concert shows and the big shows and the big light shows that come with Muse. Depeche Mode was doing that, around this time with their electronic sort of hybrid stuff. Dead interesting to me, all that. Dead interesting.
Yeah, it is Anton Corbijn. Yeah, he worked with them for ages. No, I'm not pressing that button. Don't worry. No. I have to lift that dial. I have to lift the flap and insert keys.
Yeah, well,
two at a time.
Protection system. Yeah, like in Superman 3.
Yeah, exactly. And in at number 16 is A Graveyard of Empty Bottles by Dogs D'Amour.
Not a band I'd dig at all, Dogs D'Amour.
No, not for me either. That was
weird because that's an EP that they released, and it's not an album, really. It's an EP. A bit sneaky, that.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go. Number 17 is Another Place and Time by Donna Summer. Surely you must love this, Graham.
I don't like this. This was the 14th studio album by Donna Summer. You'd think she'd know better, wouldn't you? But she met the devil, and the devil decided to, produce this, the devil being Stock Aitken and Waterman. So in 1987, while her and her husband were visiting the south of France, her husband heard Rick Astley's Never Gonna Give You Up and advised Donna Summer that she would be well served to collaborate with Stock Aitken and Waterman because that would be a good thing to do. And then he got her to sign a contract in precious blood and then went, disappeared in a cloud of dark smoke. It's weird. No, not really. Now, so this was Stock Aitken and Waterman produced through, and you can tell because it's horrible. Now, there were a lot of positive reviews. I've erased those. I found the negative ones because I think they're the ones that are true. Because the press was completely dominated by Stock Aitken and Waterman's weird. They sort of took over everything and released that much stuff that the noise out there was just, even if it was just, they're so great, they're just producing hits, it's a hit factory. This review, I think, sums up exactly the problem with this Stock Aitken and Waterman release and them in general. This is from Steve Simels of Stereo Review, and he writes, Summer's vintage records at least bore the stamp of a recognisable personality. Unfortunately, this comeback effort finds her in the ham-fisted grasp of British producer-writer Stock Aitken and Waterman. the last place any artist with even a shred of individuality should be. Stock Aitken and Waterman run a well-oiled hit factory, and while there's no doubting the guy's commercial acumen, there's also no doubting that all their songs and all their records sound alike. Summer doesn't exactly get buried here. In fact, her genuine soulfulness occasionally threatens to inject a measure of reality into Stock Aitken and Waterman's cotton candy disco settings. Mostly, though, the album is a lyrically banal, sometimes amazingly so, annoyingly clean-cut, and ultimately indistinguishable from previous Saw product. Ouch. Take down. And it's a very good description of why it's so horrible.
Yeah, it is. Shame, really. Just to go back to the Depeche Mode thing, the 101 film was directed by Don Allen Pennebaker, who was a documentary. He was really famous for making documentaries in the sort of counterculture in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And the film, they followed Depeche Mode as they toured US in support of music for the masses. And the resulting film 101 was released the following year, prominently featured a group of young fans travelling across America as winners of a Be in a Depeche Mode movie contest, which culminates at Depeche Mode's landmark concert at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. And the film is widely considered to be the impetus of the reality craze that swept MTV in the following years, including The Real World and Road Rules. And very since used DVD commentaries on their own website, both Pennebaker and Hegedus, because it was Pennebaker, Hegedus, and David Dawkins have cited 101 as their favourite and the one that was the most fun to make out of all of their films. Just to go back to the Depeche Mode and correct myself.
Wow. Well, I'm pleased you did, because Dave Gahan was I've turned him off. He was ringing me back to back for the last 5 minutes. Bloody hell, David. All right.
All right. We'll get it right, man. Sorry. I just wanted to.
I knew I shouldn't have installed those
myself.
bloody microphones. He said it wasn't for listening in, but I'm not so sure now.
Oh, he's a proper listener.
I shouldn't have agreed to it. It just seemed like a good idea. He said he'd wear my trousers for a month. I said I'd put microphones in my house. You see, drunk conversations and all. You know what they are.
You should try walking his shoes for once.
Well, yes. I'm not going to, because God knows what they want to put in my house then.
I'm true, and they're really small. He's got dead small feet. You just end up with really crunched toes.
They're not his feet, but that's a whole different, complicated conversation to have. And again, the walls have ears here. The walls have ears here. I can't say any more fear of repercussions.
I did tell you that was an odd interior design choice. To put ears everywhere.
He said he'd wear my trousers, and he did. And to be fair, the guy, he does what he says, but I didn't anticipate what it would be like living in a bubble like this. It's kind of crazy, but anyway, so I won't bore you with any more of that information or details. It's my pain. I'm dealing with it.
You are. At number 33 is 3 Feet High and Rising by De La Soul.
Me, myself, and I. 3 is the magic number. Yeah. I want into him. Brown sauce. I think he flirted with it for a while, but not my.
I thought he loved them, didn't he? He was a big fan.
Yeah, well, he adopted the same hairstyles, didn't he? I think at a certain point.
All 3 of them at the same time.
Yeah, at the same time. He did, but not my cup of tea. So certainly not by this point.
I quite like, the pop tunes are all right. Me, myself, and I, and the magic number.
Passable, all right. They're all right. Yeah, if he's in a dance, if he's in a club, you dance to it probably with your mates for a laugh.
Probably. Number 54 is Raw by Alison Williams.
Yeah, not quite my tempo, this, but if you was in your mates in a nightclub, you probably dance to it.
We've received your reviews, Mr. Adams, and there seems to be a commonality between them all. Yeah. Just like say, what are we paying you for? Well, if you're in a nightclub, you'd dance to this review.
I tell you what, come round, we'll all go to a nightclub and we'll dance tonight. How about that?
If you're in it, I'll play it. You'll see. It's right. Just like you dance to this. And at number 69, which I'm sure he was happy with, Loked After Dark by Tone Loc.
No, yeah, I'd be more than happy with that, yeah.
It's what it's Wild Thing, Funky Cold Medina. Two massive tracks.
Humongous tracks, crazy tracks, yeah. And this was produced by, Matt Dyke, R.I.P. He's died now. Michael Ross and the Dust Brothers, very famous producers of this kind of thing. So.
I know the Dust Brothers, yes. Nice. I've heard of those. I've heard of them. Not much else left out this month. 26th of March, in at number 5 was the original soundtrack by S Express.
Yes, debut album, obviously predominantly written and produced by Mark Moore, along with Mark Maguire. Pascal Gabriel co-produced the album's 2 biggest hits, of course. He was a bit of a musical genius, Pascal Gabriel, very much that kind of, he's the guy that kind of engineered things, as well as Mark.
He's got 2 forenames for a name. Must be.
Yeah, he's very talented, very crazy, clever guy. And of course, everyone remembers Theme from S Express and Superfly Guy and all the other hits that came off that. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of samples in their stuff. Theme from S Express has got 15 samples/loops in it from other songs. 15.
That's quite a lot.
Yeah, that's pretty much all of it. And Superfly Guy's got 6. So Make of that what you will. I found a good interview with Mark Moore about his time at Essex Press. I'll post it in the show notes because it is quite interesting.
Do it. Finally, in at number 64 is Cross That Line by Howard Jones. I'm surprised he was still going at this point.
Took 3 years to make this bloody thing.
3 years?
Just still going. 3 years, yeah.
How long is that in Simply Bread time?
Oh, God. Do you know, we could work out the maths of that. Quite a long time, that. I don't know how many of the Bread Hucknalls were out there doing their thing by this point. Quite a lot. He'd
shed a lot of cobs.
Yeah, he had. There'd been quite a lot of Bread Hucknalls out there causing mischief. There was an entire riot in one village where they just tried to take over. Anyway, the village of Longstanton was never quite the same after that dark day.
No.
And bread's still banned there. You can't buy bread there.
You can't.
Anyway,
it's been renamed as Hucknall.
Something like that.
Hucknall-on-the-Rye.
Don't go there, for God's sake. That's the place where they all went. It's a bit like the Jonesville, but same sort of place. Don't eat the bread loaf when you're there.
No.
Anyway, so this took 3 years apparently. It's produced by the same people that basically produced Tears for Fears. And oddly and humorously, the one track that's most famous off that Cross That Line, which is I think Cross That Line, I think that's the track, but there's a track on that album that's him playing the piano, very emotional track, was his most popular by miles, which is ironic for a guy that predominantly played electrical instruments, I always think. So
irony. There's irony there. And that's it. Not many albums released this month, but we do what we can. We're going to go away and take a quick break. That's 3 loaves in bread time.
Exactly, yeah.
And we'll be back. We've still got 5 games to get through, so please don't leave.
No,
or baby, don't hurt me. And we'll be back. We'll be back shortly. See you in a bit.
Just check under your beds before you go to sleep for any bread Hucknalls, because they're still around. They're still out there.
Absolutely.
Wild they are. They can be dangerous.
If you see the wry of their eye,
then, you can spot a real Hucknall from a fake Hucknall because he doesn't have a dam in his tooth. It's just a bread seed.
They don't have belly buttons.
Yeah, well, they won't do it because they're fed like a rye bread.
Absolutely, they're just grown. They're
put in a bowl and left in a cupboard.
They just rise over 3 weeks. If you you
have to just keep feeding them yeast.
And if you leave them too long, sort of thing, they're permanently in a bad mood. They're the sourdoughs.
Oh, God's sake.
The sour Hucknalls.
But seriously, though, do check under your bed.
Yeah, just good advice. Anyway, we'll be back in a moment. And we're back. We've checked under our beds. Everything is fine. Let's get into some games. And our first one is Dragon Ninja. Dragon Ninja, Graham. This was £9.95. This was Imagine, I believe. It's Imagine.
Exciting.
Graham, are you a bad dude?
I have bad dude tendencies, I suppose.
That's all right. Or are you a Dragon Ninja? I don't know which is which here. Here's your chance to be one of those things, as we have Dragon Ninja. Or to give it its full title, Bad Dudes versus Dragon Ninja, which is what it was known everywhere. Yeah. That is the full title. Just here, it's just Dragon Ninja. There's lots of odd nomenclature here, but anyway, whatever it is. It's another arcade port. This time, the original was by Data East, released in 1988. The game was ported to just about everything, obviously including the C64, and this port was taken on by Imagine. Dave Collier doing the coding, graphics by Stephen Wahid and John Palmer, title screen by Stephen Wahid, and the music is by Jonathan Dunn. So this is also the second arcade conversion this week to reference Ronald Reagan, as the game is set in Washington, D.C. to start with, and you, as a bad dude, are tasked with rescuing President Ronnie from evil kidnappers, who I presume are the Dragon Ninjas? I don't know. So it's weird that this game is called Dragon Ninja. It's like you missed the point now. Like normally the games are named after like Green Beret. You're not fighting Green Berets. You are the Green Beret. You're the bad dude.
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay. The first thing you'll notice when you load this up is the loading screen. It's quite nice, well drawn, but there's only one bad dude on it, as opposed to the 2 bad dudes that graced the cover of the game. In the arcade, this was a 2-player game, but here on the C64, one of those players seems to have been lost. Not on the cover, though, or any of the adverts, where both bad dudes are stood back to back. Can't help feel that's a bit disingenuous, really.
A little bit.
I mean, they're advertising this as Dragon Ninja. That's probably why they didn't call it Bad Dudes versus Dragon Ninja, because it's just Bad Dude. But it's odd. Anyway, once the game loads, we have a rather simple title screen with the game's full title of Bad Dudes versus Dragon Ninja on it. Someone clearly hadn't told the artist it was just Dragon Ninja or the program or whatever, because it's there, Bad Dudes, and the credits. A stab of the fire button. There's not much. It's an arcade game, so basically, you stab of the fire button gets into the first level, and what we have here is typical side-scrolling 2D beat-em-up action immediately. The controls offer a variety of moves. So, without the fire button pressed, you can jump up and left and right, sort of a smaller jump with the diagonals. You can walk left and right. You can do a back elbow or ankle kick with the lower diagonals, depending on which way you're facing. With the fire button pressed, and I'm just going to say this, if you're facing to the right, you can do a super jump with up and the diagonals. Hold down the fire button and press up, and you'll do a bigger jump. You can face punch, so you can do basically a punch by pressing to the right. You can do a back kick by pressing to the left. Obviously, this is all with the fire button pressed. You can do a duck punch with the bottom left diagonal, a face kick with the bottom right diagonal, and duck or drop to the lower level with down and fire. It's a bit confusing, and I think that's the game's main problem are these controls. We'll get to that in a bit. The game itself takes place in the majority of the screen. The UI is at the bottom. There's not much of it because, all the screen is game, really, so that's quite good. The UI shows your score, your number of lives, the high score, the time left in the level number that you're on, and your energy, and when a boss comes on screen, their energy as well. There are 2 levels to the screen for you to walk and fight on. It's similar to things like Rolling Thunder and games like that. So you've got kind of like a walkway sort of midway across the top of the screen, and then there's the floor at the bottom, and you can jump up and down between the pair of them. And so, you jump up and down at will. As soon as the game starts, though, and this is where the problems start, enemies pile in from the left and right straight away, being a variety of different coloured ninjas and women in short skirts and high-heeled boots for some reason. Your objective is simply to kick or punch everything and make your way to the end of the level, where you face off against a boss that ranges from a fire-breathing fat man, this is the game's terminology, not mine, an armor-clad giant, or a green and gruesome giant ninja. There are others as well, I think. So it's not like Double Dragon, it's flat. So it's like Rolling Thunder, it's like Green Beret, it's like all one of those kind of things. The first level sees you fighting through the streets of the city. Then you'll move on. If you get through that and beat the fat guy, you're up on the back of a moving truck before moving on to the sewers. In the C64 version, if you get past these 3, there's a quick load. This is a multi-load, but it's only two loads. Or 2 sections, there's 3 sections basically. Once you do that, you're into the jungle. Then get through the jungle, you're on top of a train. There's then another quick load, and that sees us into the dark caves, and then onto the outside like of a factory or something, I think it is, before finally going up against the boss who you fight on the side of a helicopter. All very cinematic, all very, 80s arcade. If you beat them, then you get some text saying, "Thanks for rescuing me, and would we like to go for a burger?" That's what you get at the very end. So that's it. Anyway, so that's it. We're just fighting through a series of levels, kicking anything that comes near us, trying to beat everything up, and trying to get through it to rescue President Ronnie. The good things in this are that they've crammed in all the stages from the arcade, which is good. We said it about Afterburner. We say it about that. It's always nice when they do actually cram everything in. It is a multi-load because I think there's quite a lot of graphic data in this, but it is what it is, and it's good to see that everything's there. The music on the title screen by Jonathan Dunn is also suitably pretty. It's a suitably pretty good Eastern style theme. It's okay. It's quite nice. It's not Last Ninja good, but it's decent enough. And the tunes that play throughout are actually from the arcade, and they're fine as well, I think. I think they're from the arcade. Sound like they were. The graphics as well, they're also very good. Very detailed high-res sprites on both you and the enemies. There's good animation and nicely detailed backgrounds. Particularly note being the truck with its parallax scrolling in the second level and the sort of ninjas crawling up the sides of it. These are all out of the arcade game, so they've managed to sort of replicate and recreate all the stages of the arcade game, and they do look C64 versions of the arcade, but they're pretty good, and I think they've done a good job in actually representing this from both a sort of visual and oral standpoint. However, the main bugbear I have with this is that I just did not like the way it controlled and the nature of the enemies. I can't help but feel just pressing the fire button should have been a punch. I'm pretty sure in Kung Fu Master, which this is a version of, really. Kung Fu Master is a walk left and right and kick things. You just press fire button, I think, to just do a kick, and that was much better. Here, you have to press a direction as well. So you have to press, if you press the fire button, nothing happens. So it's not like there's nothing going on with that. You could have just pressed the fire button. Having to press fire, and because they come at you so rapidly, you kind of have to press right and fire quickly all the time. It's 2 things to do. It's too many in the nature of this kind of game. It's a pain in the ass. Couple this with the fact that the enemies just meander about and they damage you simply by walking into you. We said this about, what was the other one? Shaolin's Road, way back. Yes, I think we had the similar sort of problem where they just sort of meander about and just hit you. And it was incredibly hard to hit them, but they could just wander into you and you take damage. Pain in the bloody ass, because they just wander through your attacks. They don't always make contact, and it makes this game way more frustrating than it needs to be, especially with the amount of enemies that pile into you. There's loads of them. They're just everywhere and they never stop. And some of them, they're just really annoying. I look at the arcade game. So I went and looked at the arcade game, and it's a much more considered and slower take on the combat. There's not as many enemies. They jump up. You've got time to kick and take time with them. This is non-stop hail of enemies that we get here. and a control system that's simply not suited to take them on. If this had been like, it's almost like they've gone for a Kung Fu Master style of amount of enemies, but they've not given you a Kung Fu Master control system to deal with that, to deal with them, which is a pain in the ass. I don't like the fact that trying to do a flying kick means you have to do a small jump, and then press towards and fire to do the kick. Awkward, really awkward. Far too often I just get kicked repeatedly by the women fighters who could reach me with little kicks, like little kicks, but were out of reach of my long range attack, so I couldn't punch them back. And when I walked towards them, they sort of backtracked, and then someone else would come up behind me and punch me and walk into me, and I'd be losing energy. So this made what should have been a fun brawler an exercise in frustration. This looks the part and sounds the part, and this could have been good, but it's bloody annoying to play. Picking up knives and other weapons was tricky as well in the heat of battle, and the relentless onslaught and the finicky controls soon had me turning this off. It's a shame, really. As I said, there's a lot to like here. It just doesn't play well at all. And I also don't like the fact this was advertised as a two-player game when it clearly is a single-player game. I think that's quite low. Don't put two people on the front of the game when it's a single player game.
No, don't.
Pick a style of game. This suffers from being relentless enemies, like what we saw in Batman last episode, but trying to sort of then replicate the controls of the arcade game. And so pick one. If you're going to turn this into a Kung Fu Master type thing, then give you fast, snappy, punchy controls. If you want this to be a bit more considered, something like Rolling Thunder and things like that, where it's a bit slower, then you have to slow down the volume of enemies, and you have to make your kicks and punches, because obviously they've shrunk the sprites and everything down. You have to allow the player time to be able to actually land stuff, and you have to use controls. Up and right and up left and fire should have been your kick. And it should have been just up to do a super jump. Just press up. Let me swap. The jump doesn't do anything. So, I don't know. I wanted to like this. I did, because I thought, it got quite a high review. It got 87%. But I think that's the visuals and the oral side of things sort of, wowing to deceive. And the amount of sort of content that's here, which is very good. Unfortunately, it's a pain in the ass to play. And that put me off liking this more than I thought I was going to. I thought this was going to be something like Green Beret, that kind of hidden Green Beret that I'd never played, but unfortunately it's not. It's more Shaolin's Road as far as I'm concerned. Not quite as bad as that, but it plays like that, and that's a pain in the ass, this C64 version, and a bit disappointing. What did you think?
The visuals were quite nice and quite impressive in that way. Production of it looked good. There's a lot going on. Sounds and music all quite good.
Just to come I did want to mention, I noticed quite a few visual bugs, so I think the multiplex was glitching out a point. My legs went floating off at times and stuff as well.
It's not really a giant leap from Green Beret, this, not really.
No, it's not.
So there's some nice details, and there is some nice pixel painting in here. There's some nice touches when you're on the truck, and you get the nice sort of parallax scrolling effect. That's very arcadey. It looks very arcade-like. It's nice, that. Helicopter bit as well, later as well. Some of those touches are genuinely nice for the C64. It was nice to see a game have that. And some of the sprites don't look too bad. It doesn't play terribly, but the controls, fighting is completely arbitrary, which a game like this shouldn't be.
No.
So it's just like Kung Fu level of move control. You're just doing random moves, and maybe you'll hit them, maybe you don't. The collision boxes on it are wild at best. So it just, and even when you pick up a knife, it doesn't seem to really help, which it should. That fire-breathing fat guy that you killed, by the way, that's Karnov, popping up there for reasons, I guess. He's just, he's just decided he's going to roll in here.
Okay.
Doesn't help matters, really. I suppose it does have bosses, a game like this should. It has the component parts. The glitching is pretty prominent when you get to certain levels and certain parts of levels, when sometimes the enemies will come on in the middle or top, whichever, but they get stuck and they just kind of queue up there waiting. Then as the screen scrolls on, they kind of drop down, and it gets messy, needlessly messy. It doesn't have to be this way. It feels like the person generator is random, and it isn't random in the arcade. These characters you come across appear at certain times for the right reason, not like this where they're just spewing on like there's something generating them off screen, which clearly there is, and not generating them. And as soon as you kill one, it generates another one off screen. They come walking on. All right, keeps everything moving, keeps the pace of the game frantic. And there's a lot going on the screen. Visually, there's a lot of action on the screen. I suppose that's what they were aiming for. But the combat makes this tedious to play, because it's just, you don't have control of the combat. And you need that in this game. You need to feel like you've got control of it. In Green Beret, you've got control of your dagger, your little stabby weapon, and you've got control of the extra weapon with spacebar. You feel like you're in control when you get the extra bits in this, and even when you do that weird flaming punch thing. I don't even know how I was doing that, but it just does it. Or the backward kick that he does periodically, and you think, that was good. But the question when I was playing this is, I could do it. That's a good move. I want to do that again. But it's not like it's how you did it. It just kind of it's Kung Fu all over again for me, and I hated that about that game as much as I liked the
arcade thematic. I hated the fact that it's a combat game where you're just a participant in pressing the button and the moves go off like a random series of animations. So that's what kept me a sort of a distance from this. I really liked the technicality of what they put together. Aside from the glitches, the background details and the scrolling are really exemplary for this kind of game, especially on a machine like the C64. That's the only thing that really keeps it moving. Everything else, the fighting, everything else, the sounds are all quite good and everything. But unfortunately, while it's a reasonable arcade conversion in its backgrounds and it's some of its sprite design, when it starts to play, it doesn't play like the arcade. It plays a bit too random. And unfortunately, that's not how this game is meant to be played. And I think, as you rightly point out, as a final footnote, it's one player only, and don't try and make it out that it isn't, because I think that's misleading and that's not fair. So you got a high score in Zap, high-ish, 87. I maybe would have put it more around the Rambo score, so around the 70% for me.
Yeah, same here.
I didn't hate it, but I just thought, and it's certainly better than Double Dragon, but I thought it's just I don't know. There's obviously compromises and sacrifices being made, and they just seem to always sacrifice the wrong thing. So
it doesn't control well.
That's me.
The controls are broken.
Yeah, I think. I'd have settled for less moves. Just punch, like you said, Kung Fu Master has punch and kick and variations therein of. I'd have settled just for that on this. You don't need a lot more than that.
No, you don't.
But what can you do?
What can you do? There you go. That's Bad Dudes, Dragon Ninja. It's something or other. It's what it is. It's only one person, though. And you're not a ninja.
No.
In it.
Maybe
you're
just
fighting
a bad dude.
ninjas.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Anyway, that's Dragon Ninja. Let's move on, because we've still got a few games left to get through. And Graham, it's over to you to play some Powerplay Hockey.
My favourite. Not really.
That's my favourite type of hockey, Powerplay.
So this was £14.95.
It was.
From Electronic Arts. Got 50% though. Something tells me that the hockey puck was broken or the stick snapped. I don't know. The creator was Dennis Kirsch, Mark Madland, good name, and the musician, of course, now he's working for EA's Rob Hubbard. And so it's another EA Sports sim lands, I guess. The loading screen appears, and once again, a sample-strewn Rob Hubbard piece of music will clank and bonk its way to your ears. It's better than the previous offering, I guess, but it still feels A, unnecessary, and B, that the drums are being played in a really small bathroom. It's really clunky sounding. By the way, in case you don't know, because I didn't know, and I couldn't remember what it meant, in ice hockey, a team is considered to be on a power play when at least one opposing player is serving a penalty, and the team has a numerical advantage on the ice. Whenever both teams have the same number of players on the ice, there is no power play. So if you're wondering what power play is, that's a power play, yeah.
Oh, there we go. I've learned something.
Exactly. You'll skip past the loading screen as it's such and load the main game, which can take a while depending on the version. And you'll be presented with an informative title screen and a range of options with the famous kind of music, which, is all in the theme of ice hockey. Okay. So you'll start off with that screen and you'll be presented with, I guess it's a view of an ice skating rink from the side, but sort of slightly elevated. So a side elevation.
It's international soccer
style.
Yeah,
it's that kind of view.
That kind of view.
And the colours and everything do actually work for this. So it's sort of bluish ice. It's got purple lines and brown and yellow. And you think it might not work, but it actually does. It does actually look like an ice skating rink. And the top part of the display is it's a ubiquitous display where you've got your period for the current period that you're in the game. On the left-hand side, you've got the USSR score. The right is USA, because this is USA versus USSR. Very of its time, obviously. And then you've got the sort of a penalty indication system for both teams underneath that. And then the main, everything else is the game window where you actually play out. And that's where the various selection screens come from, where you choose, the different things. So you'll start with play level, and where you can choose your skill level, essentially. So you've got Olympic, minor, or junior. That's actually sort of league, almost the league. You're not in leagues in this, I don't think, because it's just USA versus USSR. But it's the skill level of your opposition.
Yes.
Then you choose your team size, whether it's 1-on-1 or 5-on-5. Then you choose the active joysticks, whether it's single or double. It starts to get a bit confusing around this point. Then your USA or USSR, oddly with Joy 1 or Joy 2. And there's no way back after that. Well, there is, but obviously you have to get to the end. Then you choose the period time, 2, 8 or 20 minutes. Just as a word of advice, never choose 20 minutes. Never choose that.
No, don't.
Then start the game or repeat. By repeat, it means go back through the options and start again, essentially. So I'd like to have seen a little back option as opposed to getting all the way to the end and then going back, but okay, whatever. And then the game begins. Now, unfortunately, with no instructions whatsoever, and I couldn't find any for love nor money looking online. I looked for every single version I could, whether it was Amiga, ST. I tried to find whatever I could. I could find no instructions to play this game.
No.
So I was relying on the game to give me some basic visual clues as to what was happening. It was already kind of weird that it said USA Joy 1 and USSR Joy 2 for a single player game. I'm thinking, what does that mean then? The view of the rink, like I said, is side and elevated, so it gives you a view of the whole space, and this takes up the bottom 3/4 at least. It's actually quite a good viewing area for the game. And like I said, you've got the sort of the top is your score and all the rest of the stuff, the standard UI stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The players operate in the game window, obviously, and the action follows the puck and the players around as you skate around trying to score. The players are small, but they do look like ice hockey players. The puck is next to invisible. It's actually about 2 pixels wide, maybe even 1 pixel, but the background colour of the ice rink is an effective kind of blue shade with purple faded lines. It looks pretty authentic, and you can sort of see the action. A few eager faces look on too as the crowds, and when you get to the end goals, there are actually quite a lot of crowd, and they become quite loud if you score, and there's all sorts of funny music plays off and stuff like that. It's got the thematics quite nicely done, actually. It starts with the sort of rallying audio that you sort of get, you would expect to accompany this kind of thing, and then is the in-game clicks and crashes and crowd noises. It's pretty well versed for that, and I quite like that. It's not going to win any awards necessarily for that, but it did kind of look and play the part for this kind of game, I imagine. Now, without instructions, it was very difficult to get into this. And that's because when the play started, it wasn't immediately clear who was controlling what and in what way. Now, it didn't seem to me like I could pass or move, or which side I was controlling, so I couldn't figure out whether I was Russia or USA. And at a certain point, I seemed to be controlling a player. And then the hockey puck got passed, and then I didn't know who I'd passed it to, and I wasn't sure how I'd selected them, or even if I had, and I couldn't really get to grips with it. Then all of a sudden they would get it and they would score, or somebody would trip and there'd be a fight break out, and penalties were issued, and it even played Another One Bites the Dust, I think, at one point, or some music came on, Na 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 came on, I think. It was all playing, so it felt a little bit like, do you remember that rugby game we played, the rugby simulator?
Oh, the best rugby simulator we played.
Yeah, that one. It felt a little bit like I did with that. Ice hockey was happening, and I could see it happening. I just didn't feel like I was part of it. And I sort of got that same vibe from this, but I think it's because I didn't have the instructions, so I didn't know how to pass or shoot, which in a game fundamentally around passing or shooting is a real problem. So I literally had no idea what to do or how to hit the hockey puck or indeed how it played. So I can't really give any real effective judgment about that. I can only give it a somewhat biased view of what I experienced. And I'm not sure I'm really giving it the full justice it deserves, really, to do that. It did look to me like there is a large range of shot types you can do, like wrist shots, slap shots, and a whole load of ice hockey related stuff that I'm not aware of. And according to Zap, they are technically difficult to achieve in the game, but you can do them. Now, I didn't know how to do it or what I was doing. And I tried pressing the button and moving the joystick and I just wasn't sure what I was controlling or if I was doing anything. So what it tells me is that really that if you like ice hockey and you probably put in the hours of this, and you're going to buy this if you like ice hockey, because, you're going to. I think there's probably a good game in here because the graphics do look kind of the part. Everything was moving around the screen really well. The screen scrolled left and right, following you really nicely. It gets really jumbled in there because I didn't know who to look at, but if you do, I imagine you probably could get on with it. And I like some of the little mini interstitials and the way it played and the thematics were all there. I don't generally like this kind of thing anyway, but my feeling was that I bounced off it pretty quickly, but that's because I didn't know what I was doing and I didn't have the instructions. I think if I had them, I might have persevered with it longer and maybe I'd have got more out of it. And I suspect if you bought this with a 15 quid investment and you got the instructions with it, well, you're going to bloody well have a good time with it, aren't you? Because you shelled out quite a bit of cash for it. So I kind of played it, appreciated it from the sidelines, spent some time in the sin bin for no reason whatsoever. But it was never going to be a game that I could get into because I didn't know what I was doing, which was a bit frustrating. But I don't think that's the game's fault, I have to say. So I'm afraid I can't disagree or agree with Zap's judgment. For me, though, based on how it looked, I thought it kind of looked the part. But what about you? Did you get more from it than that?
It's a technically pretty impressive ice hockey game.
Yeah.
The characters
just couldn't do it.
Yeah, the characters are a bit on the blocky side. I thought the scoring's a little bit jerky at times, but it works okay. The thing is, and it is weird, but we've seen this in other games as well, but you only ever control one character. You don't switch characters. So once you,
right.
so you can,
a lot.
That character can just wander off screen. And my first game, I was like wondering what the hell was going on. It took me about 2 or 3 games to actually realize, I just controlled that person and that's how I play it. Okay, right, get that head around my head. So once that's how you play it, then when your other players will get it, you can tap the fire button and they will pass it to you. So they'll pass it to you and then you can then pass it out to them and stuff like that. You can trip them. And I've actually found myself having quite a decent game of ice hockey against
I could
the
say
computer.
you could do it. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah, if that's your thing. I was tripping players up. I was generally being a bit of a nuisance. I was nicking the puck. I was passing it out. I was running around. I was getting some shots in. And, I quite enjoyed myself. I'm not quite sure I knew how to do all the moves. I was trying to I was just jabbing away at the fire button and jibbing away. And I was get close and shoot and things like that. So yeah, it was okay. If you had the instructions and you knew what you were supposed to be doing, then I imagine it's a lot better. There's a decent set of options to play at different levels. There's a 2-player mode. It's a shame it's just USSR versus USA and not a sort of wider, like we've seen in the other games where there's like a league or a cup or something to go at. It reminded me of sort of a more of an accolade type affair where you get like that fast break where it's just one team against the other and it's just one game and it's like, here you go, here's a game of ice hockey, play it. Like, okay, well, that's fine. And so, that's maybe all you want. I probably think, like you'd need to dig ice hockey to get much out of this. I think you need to be an ice hockey fan. But as a C64 version of that sport, I thought this was perfectly acceptable. I think it should have been higher than 50%. Music was a bit ropey, though, as you've noted. I put that down as well. I thought the music was terrible. But for a game of ice hockey, I thought it played pretty smoothly, pretty well. There was a lot going on, a lot of sprites, no flickering. Good, so it was fine. Just like you, could really just done with the instructions, but I did manage to muddle my way through to having a vaguely decent game of ice hockey. Against the junior level, I didn't try the higher levels because I imagine I just got pasted.
No. And it's quite pricey for a 2-team game, isn't it?
£15, yeah. Yeah, it is. I mean, it's not like it's got a license on it, has it? It's just Powerplay Hockey.
No, but I was thinking there's no more than 2 teams. So, how much variation of play? You've got 3 difficulty levels and 2 teams. There's not a massive array of options there.
No, there isn't. And so maybe that's why it got knocked down to 50%. So maybe that was taken into consideration. But I don't know. Was that disc only? I don't know. It probably is from EA, maybe. But yeah, it's a good game of hockey, just overpriced for what it is. There you go. Ice hockey, sorry. There we go. That's Powerplay Hockey. It's all right. Let's move on to our next one. Maybe that is as well. And our next one, this is a budget title. This was £2.99. This is Superhero. 2 words, Superhero. Now, supposedly, Graham, the gods are bored. Bored with the whole ennui of being immortal. Oh, how the days seem to stretch forever. With nothing to break the monotony. So dull.
It's so
boring.
Excessively dull being immortal,
It's so, it's just piffling dullness of
I've killed myself 15 times this week. It's so boring.
I just want something to do. So in the hope of something exciting happening, they devise complex puzzles for each other to solve. And this time it is you, Graham, who must solve the labyrinth for the highest of stakes. Because if you lose and you don't solve the labyrinth, you shall have your immortality and powers stripped away from you. Sounds like something you might actually want if you're so bored.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, but luckily for you, though, Venus, the goddess of love, has hidden some useful objects in some of the rooms for you to find and make your task achievable. Kind of handy.
Okay.
So anyway, this comes from the home of everything simulator, Codemasters, and it's converted from the Spectrum, an Amstrad original by Martin Ellis. He did Phantom of the Asteroid.
Okay.
There you go. And it's got music by Steve Barrett. There you go.
Oh, good old Steve Barrett.
Good old Steve Barrett. We've not seen one of these for a while, and what we have here is an isometric flick screen adventure, a genre that the C64 with its fat pixels always does so well at.
Did you just fat shame the pixels of the Commodore 64?
It does have fat pixels, that's just what it is. But yes, we have another one for better or for worse. So when the game loads, it presents you with a rather Amstrad-esque title screen, sort of double height text and sort of split colour. I'm like, that looks like an Amstrad title screen. What's going on here? And there's a bit of music that's over before you blink and doesn't loop. We've seen that before in another game recently. Loop the music.
Yeah, loop the bloody music, non-loopers.
JSR back to the beginning or whatever it is.
Yeah, was it Thunderblade, I think, was it that did that?
Yeah, I think it was. Yes, I think it was. So there's nothing much to do here but press fire and you're into the wide and squashed world of Superhero. It's the best way I can describe this. And when I say wide and squashed, that's exactly what I mean. There's been no attempt to mitigate the nature of the C64 pixels, and this has some disastrous consequences for this game, which I will come to later. So yes, what we have here is a typical flick screen, gaudy coloured, medium res, flick screen, I'll keep saying that, isometric adventure. Your first task, as it starts, is to find various objects to help you. These are the boots to let you jump, the Warhammer to attack enemies, the trans-dimensional bag, which allows you to carry lots of stuff, think Sport Billy, and the mystical
Omnisac.
Yeah, and the mystical helmet, which will make the god shower gifts upon you.
Sorry.
I don't know.
Sorry, just to unleash my inner titty ye not.
What, the mystical helmet? Oh, Lord. Of them, you'll need to collect keys, winged shoes, a paralyzer, gold, and ESP activators for the ESP orbs, which will guide you towards the next guardian spirit or something. I had no idea what is going on at this point. There are also traders, energy spheres, and guardians, and loads of objects that just kill you upon contact and cost you one of your 5 lives. I don't know. There's this there's an isometric adventure happening, and you're wandering around it, and there are stuff to find, whatever. So with all that in mind, what you'll find yourself doing here is wandering from room to room, constantly battling the perspective of this game because it is simply off the charts. The perspective of this is just crazy. There's one room right near the beginning. I think it's actually the second room. So if you walk out the first room, you go down the bottom right. You went isometric, go out the bottom right exit. And I thought that there was another exit on the opposite side to which you enter. And I was like, okay, I'm going to need to move up and across to get to it. But no. I just walked down and right, just so pulled to the right and walked down to the right and was magically in line with it. I was like, that's not, I don't know what's happened. It's like Ross Kemp folded. That's what this game reminded me of. I was like, there's something gone horribly wrong here. Everything is so squashed, it's impossible to judge anything with any sense of reliability. And as if that's not bad enough. So trying to navigate, once you get the boots and you can jump, trying to navigate a jump when you're thinking, I should be able to jump there sort of thing, and you move about 4 pixels to the left and 1 up. It's all over the place. Don't know. It's just terrible. The rooms as well, because it's so wide, they don't fit on the screen. So you've got big chunks of the screen on the top left, on the left and right, just off screen. You can walk off screen, but that's not great. I checked the Amstrad version out because I thought, we'll have a look, see where this came from. And not only does that version scroll from room to room as well, whereas this one flicks, it also lets you see your character when you walk into the left or right corner of the room. Not so the C64 version, which allows you to wander off screen and usually die as they put objects that kill you there. So you've got objects off screen that kill you there. Or in some other rooms, you've got to walk around the edge of the room because the floor itself will kill you in the middle, but you can't see when you've reached the end of the thing. And if you walk into the wall, you die because there's probably something that'll kill you. And if you try to turn to walk up what you think, you won't have reached it because you'll be middle of the carpet and you'll die. It's so stupid.
Yeah.
I've never known anything like it. I'll give it the fact that it was fairly fast for one of these type of games. I've seen a lot slower, but it was okay. It wasn't too slow. But it's also ugly. Horrible colour scheme. And it's horrible. It's like, it's all pink and white in the first few scenes. And your main character, if you're a god, I don't know what god you are, but you have been severely hit over the head with a hammer because you've been squished. You are squashed. You are wide. I don't know. This is just awful. The lack of being able to see yourself when you need to, the pain in trying to work out where objects are and release them to each other because of the angles and perspective. I turned this off pretty quickly. I gave it quite a few goes. The annoying tune that plays every time you die.
Oh, God, that.
Oh, it's just perspectively challenged. Perspectively challenged superheroes are never something anyone ever wants. It's not something anyone has ever asked for. This is confusing muddle of a thing where they've tried to squish everything in and gone, well, actually, we need to rearrange these rooms a bit for the C64 because the pixels don't match the Amstrad original, or we need to draw it differently. No, they haven't. They've just done it exactly the same. It's that many squares wide on the Amstrad version. It will be that many squares wide here. Oh, it don't fit. Don't matter. They don't need to see themselves off screen. Don't matter. Yeah, we do. Terrible. Didn't like it at all. Got 43%. Should have been lower because you can't play it. What about you? Did you enjoy your time as a superhero?
No, I did not. This daft, stupid thing. Right. So this is isometric medium res in all its glory, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So what that means for the C64 is that this is 160 by 200 pixels because the standard C64 display is obviously 320 by 200. Mm-hmm. But because they're doing it in medium res, that halves the resolution, which is why they're so bloody flat. Now, and that comes with problems. What that means is that your designed levels, which were square pixels, aren't going to fit on the screen.
Nope. No, they do not.
And they don't. They're not going to fit. It won't fit. It's not going to fit. It's not going to fit. You stupid idiots. It's not going to fit. So, yes, you get a flatter angle, which they've probably sat there going, doesn't matter. It's just a bit flatter. Nobody will mind. Runs a bit quicker. And then someone didn't go, but you won't see all the levels because they're squashed and wider, aren't they? Which we haven't got nobody said that. Stupid things that people do. So your play looks like it's been under a hydraulic press, and so does everything else. Mm-hmm. All right, so that's the style you went for. But your levels don't fit on the screen either. Big problem. Aside from that, a god-awful colour scheme of red and white and that attempt to create detail, but it's just lost in the medium res murkiness, isn't it? Yeah. So all of that little fine details that were nice and detailed on square pixels become horrible and blocky and blodgy in wide-o vision. Nothing looks nice like that. You can't do fine detailed drawing And if you don't believe me, try and draw a really delicate picture and get a fine liner pen. Oh, the fine lines. Now try and do the same with a bloody great thick marker pen. It's not the same, is it? Not the same. Anyway. And those weird corner dead spots, that was the icing on the cake for me. I found one of them pretty quickly, as you would when you was trying to get off a level. I thought there was a door there, because there's just a bloody gap at the corner where the level didn't fit on the screen. Stupid, stupid game. And that jingle when you lose a life. That's going to haunt me for a while. Now I'm gonna put that jingle in randomly around this review, just to torture everybody with it, because I feel like, you know, I know we play these games so you don't have to. But we're not sharing that bloody jingle alone. We can all share in the pain of that. This is just I don't want to wander around a squashed red nightmare doing stuff. I don't want to do that, especially in something that's so isometrically challenged that it's stupid. Just be gone from this world, this stupid piece of rubbish. You're not a superhero, you're nothing.
No, and let's not talk about the cover, which seems to have a scantily clad Toya and Sting on it.
That cover!
looking askance at a dragon in the background, which has no bearing on this, on the bearded dwarf you seem to play in this.
Exactly. I don't know what happened or how this got involved and how this got made, really. I guess, like you said, some genius from the Spectrum yet again went, oh, we'll whack a version out on the C64. Oh, it doesn't run very quickly in high res, does it? Look at all those other games. Oh, let's pop it in medium res. No one will know. We knew. You stupid idiot. We knew. Don't ever do that again. Going back in time, you're getting erased. End of line.
End of line. There we go. That's superhero. 43% too high, even for $2.99.
Never. I tell you what, 160 by 200 is not a good resolution for most things. Not for backgrounds, anyway. Not for games. It's just not good.
It's not good. There we go. Oh, we've got another super coming up. Let's see if it is super. And that super is Superman, the Man of Steel. There we go.
Wow. Yeah. Superman. Yeah, this was $9.95, but only got 39%. Something tells me this is more Superman 3 than Superman 2. Or Superman 4 even.
Yeah.
This is published by Tynesoft, Fog on the Tynesoft. Interesting that they did it. Copyright First Star Software, so I'm guessing there's some weird lineage to this that I didn't dig into. The coder here was Ian Davison. He did the Summer and Winter Olympiad, which is nice, and Andrew Ridgwick, which I think he's only responsible for this one. Graphics are by Kevin Preston and Michael J. Landreth, doing the Landreth Walk. Oi! I think we've done that joke before. And the musician here was Wally Beban. God, Wally. Council Wally. It's Wally Beban. It's the Beban man. It's Bebby. Oh, Bebby did it.
Walter Beban.
Wally Beban did it. Yeah, God old Walter. So this is the comic-based superhero tale involving the Man of Steel himself, Superman. So on this, you're going to go through a series of micro mini games on the little bit of an adventure based around Superman, obviously. Now, you'll start this game with a sort of a selection screen, a little bit, where you choose your skill level. Now, I'll say right from the get-go, by the way, that the game itself here, it does look quite nice. So the interstitial graphics, those kind of parts, those kind of bits, they don't look too bad at all, actually. Mm-hmm. They do kind of look quite nice, all that kind of thing. So you started the game, you get a sort of a nice title screen. Graphics are quite good. Very slow loading this, though. So once you've chosen your skill level, expect long load times here. Because there's some, considering this is Superman, this ain't super fast. This is like Superman, just stretching in the morning, having a yawn. Oh, I've got things to do today, but I was so tired. So anyway, you go to a comic panel type view where you're given a little bit of a preamble, and then the first mission for Superman will start. Now, there's a set series of missions that you're going to partake in, and these are actually all thoroughly explained in the instructions that come with it, the manual. Now, I'm not going to go through and read out the entire. We'll put a link in the show notes, but essentially, each part of the process, each game is a slightly different take on something. And you've got something to do. And I'll just give a sort of a TLDR of the things you need to do, just to sort of save a little bit of time, because otherwise we're going to be here for a week, because it's quite a lot of game. So at the start, you've got somebody called Professor Corwin, and he needs Superman because he's at the Star Laboratories, and something's happening there, and he needs to get there fairly quickly. So you've got to fly urgently from Metropolis to the Star Laboratories, and on the way, you're going to encounter some of these evil, what they call parademons, which come out of boom tubes. because there's stuff happening. And weirdly, at that moment, I noticed in the comic panel it says he says, "Superman, we need you," even though he's speaking to Clark Kent, which is weird. And then Clark Kent goes to a separate panel and goes, "This sounds like a job for Superman." I'm thinking, of course it does, because he asked for you by name, you stupid fool. It's not like this sounds like a job for Batman. This is no Superman job. I'll get hold of Batman for you because it sounds more like his thing. Not really my thing. Anyway, but in all fairness, the way the comic panels work, they illuminate. You press spacebar. There's a sort of scrolly message with the text. It reads the text out. You can't really read it in the panel, which is a bit weird, but you can. It sort of scrolls the text across, and then you press space, and it moves from panel to panel. I quite like the way it did that. In all fairness, it's a long load, but I quite like the way it did that. And it does that for each individual part. So when you finish a level, more comic reveals, more stuff, next game, that kind of thing. In every essence, this is a multi-event game with Superman involved, isn't it, really? You can tell Tynesoft had something to do with it. So your initial level then is you've got to fly to the Star Labs to meet Professor Corwin. Now, the first game you're going to play is all these games are quite competently coded, I have to say. So you've got a rear view of Superman. So Superman sort of flying up into the screen, if you like. You're flying towards the Star Labs. On the left-hand side, you've got like a UI which details your score, time remaining for the level. Each level is on a countdown, the amount of bonus you're going to get for sort of the things you do and the amount of demons you've killed. And then you've got this mysterious panel of superpowers. Now, during each level, certain superpowers are available to you. Now, I don't get why Superman switches them off for certain levels, because I figured I didn't know he did that. I didn't know that about Superman. You can't know everything about these super people, And he also has an energy level at the bottom, and then obviously the Superman logo. So that's all like on a strip on the left-hand side. Okay, it's quite nicely done. And then the right-hand side, there's the game window. Now, in this part, like I said, you've got like a checkerboard effect zooming towards you. You're Superman flying towards the Star Labs, and there's clouds in the sky. It's actually quite nice graphics on this. I have to say the scrolling of the checkerboard effect is really smooth, and it plays, and you control Superman with a joystick flying about, and then enemies, these parademons that are born from the boom tubes, as it were. So somebody called Darkseid has, equipped some of them with concussion cannons. All right, whatever. But you'll end up, you've got two choices at this point. You've got heat vision, I think, is your only thing you can use at this point. Yeah. And obviously you've got flight. So at this point, you're flying towards the screen, these enemies come, and you'll press the fire button, and then your laser vision will shoot out, and you'll shoot them, and they'll die eventually. And that takes up energy. But if you don't use it, it replenishes itself, and then you'll fly through that, and you'll get through to the next bit, because eventually your time will click down, you'll have shot enough demons, whatever. You'll do it, because you're Superman, right? So when you do that, you'll get to the next sort of comic panel, and then you'll get there, and you've got like a little panel that details that you've got to protect a Starlab professor's on board a shuttle all of a sudden in space for reasons, and you've got to protect this shuttle satellite thing from all the various attacking meteors and enemies that fly towards it. So in this version, you've still got the panel on the left. Same displays, essentially, a little bit more colourful now with the Superman logo. And the ship that you're protecting now has an energy meter, and so does the professor who's inside this particular vehicle. And the idea here is that I think it's a shuttle, isn't it? Like a space shuttle at the bottom. Mm-hmm. So a space shuttle sort of flies upwards from the bottom of the screen, and it's got quite nice graphics and quite nice star effect as you move left and right. Superman, you're looking at from the top down. And this time, rocks and things are flying towards them, and you've got to either zap them out of the way or punch them out of the way, because now you can use your super punch at this point. And you've got to try and sort of punch these things to stop them hitting the shuttle, because otherwise they'll damage the ship and also potentially kill the professor. And you've got to do about 2.5 minutes in all of these levels to do this, 2.5-3 minutes. So, and that's how this game plays out. So this variation of it plays out. It's top down. Again, the way it scrolls left and right, and the way the stars sort of move in sort of parallax type effect. It looks quite nice, and it plays quite nice. You'll whiz through it, no problem, and then you'll get to the next bit. The next bit, you've now inside of, you get told that you've got to go inside of a sort of a special base, I guess is what you call it. And inside the base, you've got what they call it's called in the game, they call it the Combat Robot Defense game. Each one of these is this sort of revealed to you on the panel. Now, what you get here is a side-scrolling kind of game where you play Superman from the side view this time. You can run and sort of fly at the same time, but he doesn't fly. He sort of stands and flies. I don't know what you call that particular thing, but anyway, and I think you can sideways fly as well, but either way. So it's a left to right scrolling shoot 'em up really at this point, and all these various enemies, and this is where the game actually becomes frighteningly annoying, because even though you can shoot and get rid of these and knock them backwards, they can also fire like a concussion weapon at you, which just sends you backwards. So you'll spend most of your time in this game going backwards instead of forwards. Now you press spacebar to choose between you got super blow or super, they call it super breath in this. So some of the robots you can punch, some of them you can blow on, but those aren't the most exciting of Supermans. He should just punch them out. Just punch them. He got super punch. Just blowing on things. It's just a bit naff, isn't it? But anyway, so you're inside this thing. I think you're inside the satellite. I'm not sure. But anyway, you're inside this thing and you're running from left to right and you've got to basically get to the end by punching and stuff like that. And again, you've got energy. Your energy's never going to run out because you can just stand still, it replenishes. You've got a distance that you've got to cover in a certain time and you'll get bonus and you'll get through that fairly easily too. And you'll move on to that. From that, you'll go on to, I think there's another satellite defense game after that, which is very similar to the way you played the shuttle one, only you're protecting a satellite.
Yeah.
Which plays out principally exactly the same. Oh, by the way, in the previous combat robot defense game, your UI shifts to the top. It's the same stuff. It's just at the top. So then you'll go back to another protect the satellite game, which is where you're obviously flying from the top-down view, same sort of deal, a little bit harder, but the same sort of thing. Then after that, there's a space station battle part of the game. Now, I have to say, the graphics on the space station are actually pretty damn good at this point. I thought they were really good. And you're sort of seen from behind, flying towards the space station, and you just got to shoot all the various things that come towards you. You've got like a fair array of super weapons, such as they are at your disposal. But the graphics on this bit are actually genuinely nicely done. A really nicely shaded sort of spaceship and it's quite large. And if it doesn't animate or do a lot, but it does look the part, and the way you control Superman and the way the stars work around it, it's actually quite nice the way it's done. Fair play. And you think that might be the end of the game, but you'd be wrong, because then there's the final battle. And the final battle is a sort of repeat of the robot attack. Only this time you're running along a sort of differently designed lab type environment with, again, flying sideways a little bit with various different things attacking you. It plays out exactly like the combat robot defense game, only it's final battle defense game, I guess. And you're sort of running along. And the scrolling in these sections is good as well. It's not glitchy or anything like that. It scrolls quite smoothly. They play out as nice individual games. So bear in mind, there's a long load for the comic panel and the game between each of these. And when you get to the end of that, you get like a control panel thing, which you can blow up. And then that is officially the end of the game. You then get your final scores, a picture of Superman, a couple of nice graphics, one where he's flying towards the screen, very dynamic looking. One where he's sort of sat on a chair when you get your final score, and that's it. Congratulations, you've finished the game. So it plays out as it's hard to describe this game. It is really like a multi-event Superman game where each instead of the events of like an Olympiad or it's like Superman just doing stuff in different ways. Now that kind of works in the context of Superman. I think the problem here is Superman's not fighting anything in particularly interesting. I suppose we'll come to that. So graphically and thematically, there is a good game here. You know, there's long load times and all of that, but it has some really nicely detailed sprites and backgrounds, and the scrolling effects in all the levels are actually really good. Those parts are fine. The mixture of viewpoints works nicely, so you get like a 3D zoomer, top down, side scrolling, and these all actually individually play pretty well. The controls are simple. You move it with the joystick and shoot, space to change power, all of that, and the audio works, such as it is, although the weird version of the opening theme is kind of a bit discordant, I felt, but it sort of works for what it is. All of that feels like a good comic book game. It sort of does. However, problem is, you are the problem. You're Superman, which means technically you're invincible. And is there ever a game that really makes you feel that way? It's this one, because you can't die. Or at least not easily. I mean, you can be slowed down and you can be pushed aside. And but unless you run out of time or the professor dies in one of the levels where you're meant to be looking after them, you as Superman cannot die. And which means the levels play out in some instances really, really easily. In fact, it's so easy, this game. I finished it on all of the difficulty levels, I've finished the whole game multiple times and on every difficulty level without really trying. 2 of the levels on this, I didn't even move the joystick. I just stayed in the middle because he's Superman. So if anything hits him, your energy isn't going to run down. And it regenerates quicker than it runs down. And so you can just protect the satellite and the shuttle by just being in front of it. How crazy is that? So you're never really challenged. I think you're just more annoyed, really, in this. Those robot levels will annoy you. And Superman, when he gets annoyed, you can't just blow the robots away. You've got to punch them and blow them, smash them up and do super smashy stuff. So during the combat defense game and the final battle, the way the robots just push you back, it just gets plain old annoying. Now, the other levels here don't challenge you at all, like I've said. And you can just float through them with periodic zapping, maybe, if you get bored, or punching or doing stuff. But all in all, this game is far too easy. And it is all tied together with a nice comic book idea. But it's the most boring Superman comic of all bloody time. Just Superman he's not doing anything that challenges him. There's no super villain. There's no General Zod. There's no Phantom Zone. There's no Kryptonite. There's nothing. This is a walk in the park Superman. Superman protects satellites. He does that in his sleep. There's no challenge here for it. You could just pick up that satellite and throw it to where it needed to be. You don't have to sort of fly along protecting it, does he?
No.
He could just continuously blow. He's got super lungs, so he never runs out of air. You don't breathe air. So he could just continuously blow super breath and get everything out of the way of that shuttle permanently. You don't have to do any of that. So you need to offer something up in these things that is, and this such a rich material basis, and maybe there's some copyright issues, I don't know, but there's such rich material basis for all of the Superman architecture, the Superman license, the Superman villainy that's out there. There's so much of that stuff. I find it almost inconceivable that you would pick Superman needs to fly to a lab to protect a professor and punch some robots. All the things Superman could fight and Superman could battle. This is a guy that sleeps, in a base in the middle of the bloody Arctic, is it? Or the Antarctic. He sleeps in his fortress of solitude and periodically recharges himself by laying on the sun. You ain't going to phase him by throwing robots at him. I'm just saying, you ain't going to do that. So this game is all of the Superman thematics, but none of the Superman chicanery, is it? It's doing the visuals, but it's not got the idea of Superman game and what it would be to fly as Superman and do stuff that challenges him. And I think there's such a missed opportunity because they clearly had the graphic and oral and visual talent to do something like this and the wherewithal to think about putting it across multiple levels and make them load in, albeit slowly, but just thinking it. Let's not try and cram it all into one load. Let's spread this out and mix it up a bit. They're all good ideas, but you've got to put something in there that makes it a Superman game, not just a Superman can do stuff. I mean, you may as well have had an entire level where Superman fries an egg or makes an omelette or something. It would have been far more entertaining watching him do that than just doing stuff that Superman can do really easy anyway. So it needed a proper villain for me, like a threat that Superman would find challenging, that you would think, oh my God, Superman is the only person who can take this on, and maybe even not Superman. That would have been a good Superman game. What we have here, this day in the life of a superhero type thing, doesn't work for me. It's not very exciting, and the game is ultimately too easy because of it. So there you go. What did you think?
It's pretty much exactly the same. I mean, there's certainly some thought that's been put into the presentation of this. I thought impressions were very good when you start off. I thought the Superman theme by Wally Bedman was pretty solid rendition for this. I thought it was pretty good. There's a great title screen, nice comic interstitials, set up the games you'll play. The wraparound, the wraparound of is all great. Everything's really cool. I was like, hey, wow, this is really impressive.
Yeah, all the trimmings.
39%. You're thinking, what's gone wrong? But then you get to the games themselves, and they're really basic. I mean, it's like a space area for toddlers. It's the first one.
Yeah,
it's essentially what it is. It's like it's a very nice, and I mean, and that 3D sort of checkerboard effect is straight out of Cosmic Causeway or things like that. So but it's a good. All the graphics are really nice. Everything looks great. Everything it's smooth. It's nice. Everything's good. But it's really dull. No amount of nice visuals can alter the fact this is really dull and simplistic from the gameplay perspective. Shooting simple demons, you fly through space twice, you go down a corridor twice, and you shoot a space station or something, and that's it. It's very trivial and boring. The lack of challenge completely misses the point of how you put peril into Superman stories. As we saw, you mentioned General Zod, things like that. Don't the people. It's the people. It's this. If it's Superman 1. He's got a choice to make, hasn't he? Which missile does he go after to save? You can't save both. He has to sort of alter time and things like that, and he has to do that. And so there's a choice. That's how you put the danger into Superman, because he's Superman. Yes. He can't be hurt, but he can lose people and things like that. And that's because he's, that's the threat that comes from him. Or you lob kryptonite at him.
Yep.
and enough kryptonite gets on Superman, he will die.
Yeah,
that's the whole point. But don't do any of that. So I don't know what they were doing with this. It's like they had all the wraparound. They went, we've got these. So either there was some, maybe DC or whoever this was licensed from said you can't kill him. Okay, well then we need to put Lois Lane, Jimmy Olsen. We need to put them in peril, and he's got to save them. And if he doesn't, what it is. Shame though. It looks lovely. Sounds great. Just lacks anything compelling even before you've gone through it once. So I think about 39% is about right, because the game here is woefully lacking, which is a bit of a shame. Superman, the Man of Steel. This isn't the first Superman game on the C64, by the way. There was one that was never reviewed by Zapped, by Beyond Software, called Superman the Game. Maybe we'll look at it at some point.
Well, I was looking then at where First Star come into this, because obviously First Star Software have got, they've done other stuff on the C64 as well.
Well, First Star did the first game.
Yeah, they did the 1985 one. But if you notice, there's similarities to the tonality and the language of that game. So there's a character called Darkseid in it. But in that game, the object is to save the citizens of Metropolis.
Yeah.
Which makes sense for a Superman game, because that's what Superman would do. But I don't know. I didn't get that from this latest version.
Yeah, I mean, Darkseid's he's the big thing. He's the thing that turns up at the end of Batman versus... No, Darkseid's is he in the Justice League film? He's just a bad guy in the Superman story.
I haven't watched any of those recent ones because I can't stand it.
But anyway, yeah, Darkseid's, he's a character, but he just needs more than this. But, such a shame, really, because like I said, it is a the people who made this worked on things like Summer Olympiad and things like that, Winter Olympiad, something called European Games. And I just found out as well that coming in 1990, we've got a Beverly Hills Cop game.
Oh, gosh, wow, okay.
I never even heard of that, but...
No,
coming from the same people who did this.
Okay. Well, again, graphically, they might do well. And they did do Boulder Dash first star, didn't they? So.
Yeah, they did, yeah. Superman, Man of Steel, Game of Dull. Let's move on. We've still got one game left and then we're done for the week. So let's move on to that. From one Man of Steel to another. Jocky Wilson's Darts Challenge.
Yeah, I suppose so, yeah.
He's another superhero. He's Hawkeye.
He's a Man of Steel Darts, yeah.
Man of Steel Darts. From Zeppelin Games comes Jocky Wilson's Darts Challenge, a game I'm not sure anyone ever, anywhere asked for.
Nope.
But Jocky Wilson, if you don't know who Jocky Wilson was, and some of you may not, he was a Scottish professional darts player from 1979 into the 90s. He was a regular on TV that I was usually forced to watch, alongside other big-name darts players like Eric Bristow, John Lowe, and Cliff Lazarenko, so if you remember them. And also featured on Bullseye quite a lot. Jocky did.
Yeah.
He won the World Professional Darts Championship twice in 1982 and 1989, and also won the British Professional Championship a record 4 times between 1981 and 1989.
Very good darts player.
Yeah, so maybe some people did want a darts game based on Jocky Wilson. What do I know? Obviously someone did because he's got one. Whether they did or they did not, we have one, and here it is. This was coded by Kevin Franklin, graphics by Michael Owens, and music by Adam Gilmore. We've seen them before. It's the team behind other budget hits such as that Ball Blaster, Draconis, and Zybex. Okay. So this does mean some good production values are to be expected. And there's a decent title screen to this, which sees Jocky slim down a bit. He slimmed down a bit on that.
He was a big old guy, wasn't he?
He was, yeah. And once the game loads, we've got a decent tune from Mr. Gilmore and an icon-driven, well-shaded menu system. It's like, quite cool looking. And we've got 3 types of games to choose from here. We've got head-to-head, which is your 2-player game. We've got tournament, or we've got round the clock. Like I said, head-to-head is your 2-player mode, where you can play the first to up to 4 sets. You can do 1 set or up to 4 sets. The way you pick this is quite confusing because there's 3 icons. There's like an S to start, and there's another icon which changes depending on the type of game you've chosen. You've got like these icons around the sort of menu screen, sort of the head-to-head, like 2 heads facing each other, but they are one. Then you've got the tournament mode, and then you've got the round the clock, which is a clock. And depending on which one you've highlighted, you select, the second option sort of changes. So it might go from the number of players to the number of sets, or how the difficulty works. So you've got to be kind of careful sort of thing which one you pick. It's a bit confusing at first. So yeah, tournament mode sees up to 4 players take part in a knockout tournament, and round the clock has you trying to hit the numbers 1 to 20 in order in the fastest time possible. Once you've chosen your mode, you get a quick bit of preamble. In tournament mode, you can enter each player's name because you can have up to 4 players in the tournament mode. And then the main game of darts commences. So the way this is presented is basically there's a dartboard in front of you. So you've got a big round dartboard. You look at like as if you're looking at it head on. And your dart starts off kind of floating around in the center of the board, and it's sort of floating about. If you push the joystick in any direction, it makes the dart starts moving in a sort of circular motion in the direction that you've pushed, and it sort of goes off, and then you got to try and control this floaty arrow to get it where you want it to go. So you push up and it floats up, and you pull it down, it floats down in a kind of circular motion, and as it's moving around, you got to it's a bit floaty. It's a bit hard to control, and as it moves around, pressing fire releases the dart. Of a way you've sort of pressed the fire and it arcs in, and you get that, you get the score, whatever you've hit. And you repeat this for your 3 darts. Once this is done, you get your score, and that's it really. In 2-player mode, play then passes to the next player. If you're playing in tournament mode and you're playing one of the computer-controlled players, we then get sort of an overhead shot of your opponent at the hockey, throwing their darts, and they sort of arc in. I quite like this because where they hit the board is the score they get, so you can kind of tell where they're sort of aiming. The scores, the UI for the game it's got the scores. They're on the right of the screen, so it'll start at 501 and it counts down. So if you get 60, it'll go down to 441, and till you get all the way down to 0, you end on a double. It's basic darts rules. There's not much to describe here. It's just darts, and the screen shows the dartboard and you throw darts at it. In round the clock mode, the UI shows the number to hit and the timer, and they're on the right. And you can also choose to make it, when you're choosing your options for the round the clock mode, the little option, so the second kind of option button that you can hit allows you to choose, you can hit any part of the number. So if you hit 1, you can hit the treble or the double or the main chunk. You can have it to just hit the single parts, you can have it to just hit the double parts, or you can have it to just hit the trebles, if you want a real challenge to go around the board. And I don't know, that's about it. What is to say about this? As budget darts game go, is it as good as 180, which we played ages back? I don't think it is, because the control method's not as good. It's too floaty, and it's far too tricky to aim properly. And what that leads to is games taking ages as you fight to control the dart as it meanders around. You're trying to get it in. And so what should be, darts it's quick and snappy. You throw darts like, doosh, doosh, doosh. You throw them really fast, and you're done, and you're out. Dart throwing should take a few seconds. You go pick them up and you take them out. It's not. It takes ages because you're trying to aim this damn thing. So each throw takes a good, 10, 15 seconds, I was finding, trying to get it where you want it to be. So multiple games within multiple sets, they just take forever. It just goes on and on until you never really feel in control because of that method. It just takes too long, it drags out, and it just gets a bit boring. The presentation's all there. The modes are interesting, head-to-head tournament, round the clock, all fine, all what you'd want from a darts game. And the inclusion of a single-player tournament, again, you just put one player in, it's good touch, so you can just play through a tournament. I like that all that's there, but it just feels like you're fighting the control all the time. And I never felt, and I played this quite a bit, that I was ever getting any better at the game, no matter how much I played it. It was just always arbitrary where the sort of hand would float off to, the dart would go, and I never really felt like it was going to go where I wanted it to be. Also, as well, I found the lack of a restart button a pain because it takes so long. You can't even know what to expect. I wanted to go back to try the other different modes. You can't get back. You've got to go through the whole game or turn it off and reload, which is annoying because there's no way getting back to the title screen. It's an okay game. It's an okay darts game. It looks the part. It got 73%. Yeah, it's just too slow and too dull and too boring. There's not really any physics because you just throw the thing and it goes where you press the fire button. And it's okay, but it's too slow and too dull for my liking. If you wanted a darts game on the C64, go play 180 because I think it's the better game. It's faster and it's more just better to play, I found. What about you?
Yeah, it's a bit wobbly-handed for me, this, really. I was just looking, it's quite a sad tale, actually, Jocky Wilson's.
It is, yes. It is. I didn't really want to get into too much about it, but yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's quite sad. He's such a talented player. It's just a tragedy, really. He died. Rest in peace, Jocky. He died in 2012.
He did, yeah.
But for the game then, because this is the first darts game based on an actual darts player, which is quite interesting.
I think it might be, yeah. First one we've come across.
So,
yeah.
But I just started to get a bit dizzy playing this. All the options are there, and that beginning bit, like you said, does look part. Not terrible, that, but the weird rotatey controls, I found them a bit nauseating. It was like,
yeah.
This doesn't mean the game's terrible. It's passable, and you can play darts with it. But is it better than 180? Was the key question for me. No, is the simple answer to that. Like you said, you've got game variations. Things are lively, I suppose. The display is quite large. The scoreboard nice and clear. But I just don't see there being any way you can get proper applied accuracy. It can never be a thing in this game. So it's just really down to more chance than getting better at the accuracy thing, because it just kind of is a bit random the way it sort of rotates and moves around the board. So it's floaty. I wrote down floaty as well, so we've obviously both agreed on that.
Yeah.
And I don't think rotational chance is a good way of playing darts. I'm pretty sure that Jocky Wilson did not just go to the board and go, wee, wee, wee.
Like drawing a spirograph.
He famously was he was a very consistent darts player, Jocky Wilson. And so just, as with all darts players at that time, troubled in all sorts of ways, but he was, very consistent. So I don't know that he would have had much to say about this game, probably more for curiosity than anything else. But it's not a bad darts game. It's not terrible. It's only £3, but you're going to play 180, aren't you? Which was the same price, if not cheaper, and probably better to play.
Yes.
So no, they gave it 73%. I think it's a little bit on the generous side, but all right, it's a darts game and you can play darts with it, and it has a few darts options on it, so all right. But it ain't as good as 180. So.
No, it's not. And there we go. That's it for this week. It's our 9 games and our albums. A chunky lot of games. We've still got 19 games to get through for March. Woo. Still got 2 more chunky episodes coming. What did we look at today? Well, this week we've looked at Zak McKracken and the Alien Mindbenders. Probably the pick of the week.
Yeah, well, it's certainly better than bloody Pasteman Pat.
I was going to say Pasteman Pat was the other option. Or maybe Ghost Hunters. Either of those two. SDI was probably the other one, which is, it's a decent conversion of a average game. Yeah. It's an okay game. Dragon Ninja, again, could have been a lot better, I think, if they'd just taken the time with it and just not fallen foul of the Kung Fu masterness, what they fell into.
Yeah.
Powerplay Hockey, again, decent. That's actually okay. Decent ice hockey game. Superhero, wide.
So wide.
Superman the Man of Steel, presentationally good, but lacking in game. And Jocky Wilson's Dark Challenge, again, looked the part, but floaty.
Bit floaty.
Yeah, so not a terrible week. Not terrible, but just two really budget titles in there, really. But an okay week. What we got coming up next week? Well, next week, Caesar's getting to Lead Storm.
Okay.
Could be okay. Techno Cop.
Doesn't sound so good.
I know. I really hope he's in a disco. But I don't think he is. Terror Fighter.
Right.
That's Terrera Fighter.
Terror. Oh dear.
Yeah. TKO.
Okay.
That's a Accolade boxing game.
Yeah, weird one as I remember it.
Yeah. Steel. I think that's a budget shooter. I think. Golf Master.
Oh no! Why are they bringing out golf games?
Well, coming up soon, we do have the longest title 64 game. I think is Jack Nicklaus's 18-hole golf course challenge super master thing. It goes on forever.
Oh God!
Title for that's later down the line. Jet Bike Simulator. Who do you think that's by?
3 guesses, and I know exactly what it's going to look and play like as well.
It's actually, I've got down here that's $8.99.
It can't be. It's got to be wrong.
I've got to check that out. Actually, maybe it can't be. Must be wrong. Master Blaster, which I really hoping is based on Mad Max 3, but I reckon it isn't. And Tiger Road is our next one.
Is Tiger Road an arcade conversion?
I believe it is, isn't it? Yes, it is. It doesn't look like 70%. It's run along and hit things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there is an arcade, I think. Yeah.
Check out that Jet Bike Simulator one. Hang on. No, it is $8.99.
Weird.
It is Codemasters.
Okay. Going on there.
I don't know. It's got $8.99 down on Lemon. That's what I'm looking.
Probably because you get an extra 3 levels, but you have to pay for them.
It's got a lot of credits. It's by the Oliver twins. Oh, I know what that means, don't you? That's a Spectrum conversion.
Yeah. It's the conversion, yeah.
Oh, well, anyway.
By the way, something I did mean to go back to, by the way.
Yes, go on.
Do you know when we were talking about the oh-so-wonderful Ghost Hunters, and I said it reminded me of another game we'd played?
Yeah.
It was that Bumblebee game that we played. One we played for the sort of retro revisit, but it was that one. Antics.
Yeah.
Where, because in Antics, you've got a pollen count, and your pollen count goes down if you go near things, and it's just this odd similarities.
Yeah, similar mechanics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've got to wander around avoiding things in that game as well, and stuff. It's similar. Anyway.
Yeah. It reminded me of like a shit Dizzy.
Yeah. Shizzy.
Shizzy.
That's just came to me.
Dit. Yeah. Weirdly, Jet Bike Simulator looks like it's got Trent Reznor on the front of it.
It does. But it ain't.
Trent Reznor's Jet Bike Simulator.
Oh, God, no.
Bike like a hole. Oh, something like that. Anyway,
I'd pay
that's it.
Good money for there to be a 9 Inch Nails version of that game.
That would be fun. I think it's a pretty long episode. Another one this week. Yeah, we've got loads to get through. March is a big month. We've still got 19 games to come.
Exactly.
Have you got anything you wish to add? We chucked all the Patreon stuff at the beginning. I don't think I've got much more.
No. I say let's. I think we're done now. That's it. We're done. I need to wash my eyeballs from some of that horror. So
yeah, same here. All right. Well, on that note, we'll let you go. As ever, I have been Adrian Mills.
And I have been Graham Raddings, and I am not a bred version of Mick Hucknall, nor do I have any, and nor will I ever have any.
And this episode has been broadcast from Hucknall-on-the-Rye, and we will see you again next week. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to the Zapped to the Past podcast. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the world of Commodore 64 games, as well as the music, films and TV from around the 1980s, driven, of course, by the issue of Zap 64 magazine published at that time. We will return with a whole new batch of games and stuff to talk about next week. Until then, if you want to listen to or download previous episodes of Zapped to the Past, and why wouldn't you, they can all be found on our website at zappedtothepast.com, as well as being available on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Deezer, Audible, Player FM, and, well, pretty much anywhere where we can upload them. By the way, we do always love to hear from our amazing listeners, so if you'd like to contact us about anything in the podcast or beyond, you can do so by emailing us at zappedtothepast@gmail.com. We're also active on Twitter under @ZapToThe, as well as Facebook, Instagram, and most social media platforms. Just search for Zap to the Past and you'll find us. Oh, and if you like the podcast and what we're doing, please do like, share, review, rate us. It really helps. Something, apparently. The Zap to the Past podcast is written and produced by Adrian Mills and Graham Raddings and recorded at Flaky Bits 2.0 Studio. All opinions expressed are those of the writers, and while we indeed love Zap 64 magazine, the Zap to the Past podcast is not affiliated with it in any way. Stay safe, see you next time, and remember, we play these games so you don't have to.